Hey guys. This is part 8 of What If Naruto Was an Introvert. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 36. The Outwitting of the Outsmarted. Otogekyu's secret village was beneath the ground. There were tall wooden palisades that encircled the entrance, however, each richly fortified with wires, caltrops, and sharp blades. The stench of blood in the air was unmistakable. It was clear there had been a battle recently, and it was even clearer that it hadn't been the first time, judging by the jaded eyes of the guards that looked at them arriving. You too! One of the guards, probably a chunin, identify yourself, Sasami Fuma said to come over here. Naruto exclaimed. Me Pops and I, we're survivors from the monsters, my poor Moya! Jiraiya sniffled and wailed. Naruto actually sported a nervous tick mark. The man was actually wailing that with his breath filled with alcohol, and he was taking in terrible sniffs every time he opened his mouth. Yeah, anyway, we were going to the daimyo, but you don't know, kid? The daimyo's gone, the second guard, a tall muscular man with a giant sword on his back, said. We're all that remains of Rice Field Country. Come on in, we're closing the gates for the night anyway. Naruto gritted his teeth as he stepped inside, carrying the fake drunk Jiraiya with him as the wooden palisades slid behind them, trapping them inside enemy territory. The man with the giant sword came down to meet them, extending his right hand for a handshake. I'm Hanzaki, the head of the Fuma clan, he said firmly. I am the new Otokage, but that's just a name now, he exhaled. The monsters that attacked your village, were they winged? And no, Naruto shook his head. The man hadn't even asked them from which village they came from, but simply asked about the monsters as if afraid. What was the reason for it? Thank Kami for small graces, the tall and broad shinobi murmured. It was then that Naruto finally got a good look around the outside area of the village, and that was when he saw misery in the face of others. Many farmers were stiffly holding crude lances or old swords, while a few of the young ones hesitantly held kunai or scythes. They had never wielded a weapon, and it showed. Well, follow me inside, we'll get you a spot. Food's the only thing not lacking around here, Hanzaki remarked firmly as he gestured for them to follow. Food and rice sake, he sighed. Is it bad? Naruto asked slowly. It's worse, Hanzaki shook his head. One day, the monsters just appeared. He began to descend the stairs, passing by 100 of tents that held what few men and women could fight. And they didn't die. It was as if they couldn't feel pain, or care for their life. We stabbed them in the heart, and they lived. We tried to bash their skulls and they lived. We decapitated them, and they still lived, Hanzaki shook his head. If you can call that life, of course. And they're everywhere in Rice Field Country? Naruto asked in shock. Outside the walls, the rest of his team was in danger then. Yes and no, the man said as he knocked on twin giant bronze doors, the entrance to Otogekure. The doors creaked open, they move at night, and during the day they're catatonic. The man nodded to the guards who had opened the doors, who began to close them back. The corridors had purple walls, and were wide enough to let 2 ox carts pass through at the same time. Yet it was a tight fit trying to walk, because women and children sat frightened against the walls. Their eyes were gaunt and filled with dried-up tears, while the mothers held on to their sons and daughters protectively while they passed through. There was pure desperation in the air, and even Jiraiya had a more somber drunken mood at that. Hi Pops, Naruto whispered. What do we do now? Hick, Jiraiya answered. We help them, of course. Hanzaki smiled as he walked past a busy crossroad lit by eerie purple light torches to reach for the granary. You must be hungry, both of you, he said, nodding to one of the 5 men stationed in front of a metal door. The man nodded and opened the door, admitting the 3 of them inside. It was a dining room. Normally it would be packed with people eating, but it was now eerily empty, save for strange crystal-like growths that ran across the ceiling, giving the area a soft pink tint. There's no way to keep people out of the food stores otherwise, Hanzaki stated. And we need to keep them away from Guren-san too, or she can't concentrate. Naruto didn't know who this Guren was, but then again, he was actually starting to think there wasn't a war to fight in Otogekure to begin with. It was as if they had been used by Orochimaru, and then discarded once they had served their purpose. Jiraiya was probably thinking pretty much the same thing. The man finally reached the end of the room lit by crystals, opening one of many giant drawers and taking out rice cakes and rice onigiri. As I said before, food's not the problem. He gestured for them to sit, before breaking bread with them. We need soldiers, Hanzaki said. We're We're planning on leaving and trying our luck in Demon Country. They don't have much of a military, and we can offer our services to them in exchange for protection. Orochimaru, the previous leader of Otogekure, he betrayed us. He betrayed all of us. Hanzaki shook his head slowly. That's why I'm pleading you, Jiraiya-sama, help us. Naruto's eyes widened as he cursed loudly, jumping away from the table and palming the only weapon he had on him, the Yoroi Tanto. He ducked and rolled, evading a flurry of crystal shuriken that crashed against the ground and erupted in spikes that flew to Naruto's pursuit. He jumped away, slamming down one of the tables in the dining hall to use as a shield. The moment the shuriken touched it, however, it crystallized on the spot. Fragments of pink began to fly in Naruto's vision, as the crystals overhead splintered and broke. Cursing, he brought his hands together to begin his only wind technique, when Jiraiya's voice cut through calmly, followed by Hanzaki's own. Stop! Naruto stilled, just as the crystals materialized into a dark blue-haired figure wearing a long green coat with a white furred neckline. The woman's lips were glossy, and she licked them while keeping a keen eye on Naruto. How did you know who I was? Jiraiya asked then, looking back to Hanzaki. Orochimaru was extremely paranoid when it came to you, the woman said. He had us learn all your possible disguises and mannerisms, by heart. He also told us before leaving that you might have come here after he began his attacks, so we just knew that, when an old man and a boy arrived without showing any sign of prolonged malnutrition, you suspected, Jiraiya accused. But you had no proof. The crystals on the ceiling emit a light frequency, the woman said. I can hear them vibrate when something electronic is in range. Something small like ninja radios emit a specific frequency. So you signaled him that we were indeed shinobi, and you took your chance, Jiraiya nodded. Very well, he exhaled before standing on the table. Indeed it is. The gallant Jiraiya of the Sannin, striking a pose with a bright smile, the Sannin smirked. What can I do for you, young lady? He then said with a lecherous face, moving closer to the woman who just shuddered and stepped back. You'll find no luck with Guren-san, Hanzaki said calmly. You're too old for her tastes. Guren narrowed her eyes on Hanzaki, who just shrugged. And I'd rather not have to dispose of another crystal corpse. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow at that, but said nothing more. Naruto frowned. Crystal corpse? In any case, Hanzaki said. We would like to leave for Demon Country, if not us, at least the civilians who have done nothing. Why not cross to Fire Country? Jiraiya said with a questioning voice. We are still ex-Orochimaru loyalists, Hanzaki said. Do you really think we'll be let go, even after delivering the information Konoha wants? So it's a beneath-the-table exchange you'd like to make? The Sannin queried. Exactly, Hanzaki nodded. Guren-san? Could you bring Jiraiya-sama's apprentice out of here while we talk? He stays where I can see him, Jiraiya retorted quickly. His eyes shone slightly. If that is your desire, Hanzaki sighed. Very well, what I wanted to talk about was... The doors suddenly jerked open, as a scared Chunin yelled out in the room. We're under attack. The monsters found a way inside. What? Hanzaki's exclamation was met with Guren dashing out of the room, faster than Naruto could follow her. Naruto! Assist them! Jiraiya bellowed. Hanzaki-san? We can let the discussion begin after we deal with this problem. Of course, Hanzaki nodded stiffly. Naruto followed Jiraiya outside, not seeing the simple summoning technique the Sannin used before pursuing Hanzaki. A small red toad croaked in the empty room once, before slowly making its way deeper in the compound. Jiraiya had a secondary mission after all. The tents were on fire when they stepped outside, as the few people who weren't screaming slashed and stabbed with their weapons against strange hulking creatures made of flesh and torn muscles, whose overgrown bones were used as crude makeshift maces to tear and smash to bloody pulps the defenders. Overgrown sack of flesh pulsed eerily in the night sky, as their deformed mouths filled with crooked teeth moaned their despair and their pain. Their muscles pulsed as the monstrosities seemed to grow and rip themselves apart as they gorged on the flesh of the deceased, before slowly breaking apart into two new, smaller creatures. What are those things? Naruto's exclamation was met with Jiraiya making a single hand sign, letting a thick stream of oil coat the closest of the monsters, before the second hand sign added fire to the mixture, igniting the beast and making it scream a sharp blood-freezing shriek. Orochimaru's experiments! Hanzaki yelled. This is why we need your help, Jiraiya-sama. As he said that, he pointed to the monster that the sage had burned, which was now shuddering as the charred skin began to crack and splinter, before showing raw red flesh that soon regrew and reformed. What do you do with them usually? Jiraiya's voice carried over just as Guren's crystal particles flew to freeze the beast in a prison of crystal. She smashed the creature to bits afterwards. That, Hanzaki curtly replied, but even Guren-san can't hold for much. The walls trembled as a roar echoed, soon followed by the crashing down of the wooden palisade to the side. Naruto had expected to end up battling a monster, not to find his teammate running across the landscape towards him, eyes shining and with a kunai in her mouth. Sakura didn't know they were trying to peace talk with the Otogekure shinobi. She didn't know there were civilians inside the village. She only knew that her packmate was in danger, and that sensei had told her they had to wait. She had waited until she had seen him in the thick of the battle, then she had charged ahead and blown up the wall with a dozen of explosive tags. It didn't matter that the noise had brought in more of those monsters. It didn't matter that she had just made a hard fight a suicidal one-stand. The pink-haired Chunin used her right hand to tear apart the neck of an Oto shinobi, slashing at him from behind as she sped up, jumping in the air and twisting as she spat out the kunai to grab it with her free bloodied hand before using gravity to fall fasted and smash the head of one of those monsters like it was a watermelon. A ripe watermelon. She didn't stop, not caring that the monstrous creature was actually standing back up with its head reforming around the kunai, as if it was just some sort of momentary trouble. Naruto swallowed and sidestepped the bone mace of one of the creatures, his hands calling forth the chakra to his throat as he began to make it spin within his mouth. The moment he heard the familiar sound of chakra grinding against itself to form wind, he exhaled the lethal blades of air against his opponent. The blades sliced through the experiment's chest, cutting him into two distinctive halves and scattering its limbs like it had happened with the deer itself. Naruto then felt Sakura's back against his, as the girl had apparently moved to watch his back. "What are you doing here, Sakura?" he exclaimed as he found himself parrying the attack of a sound nin with the chakra-reinforced Yoroi Tanto. The problem was that Hanzaki hadn't had the time to tell his men he was supposed to be on their side, and now that he was back-to-back with a Konoha ninja who had killed one of their own, it would be all the more difficult. "You were in danger," she yelled back. "I'm a shinobi," he screamed as he took a vertical slash forward against the sound nin, before crouching and jumping forward to stab the thigh of the enemy ninja before he could bring down his kunai against Naruto's back. The boy then sidestepped, letting his blade tear through the man's thigh muscles and moving out of his range of attack as he extricated from the very bone of the leg his weapon. The sound nin screamed as he clutched his leg and fell on the ground, but his screams were gurgled to death by Sakura stomping down on the man's neck and breaking his spine, before she charged ahead to slam her own fist against an enemy behind Naruto. The sound of a skull caving in was something Naruto would now remember forever. It made a strange crunching noise followed by a wet slurp as the fist removed itself from the tender flesh. Naruto saw a bone club coming down on Sakura again, from a strange experiment that held two heads rather than one, when an ink lion slammed into the foul creature and pushed it to the ground, before a fireball lit it up enhanced by the gasoline in the ink. Sai's flurry of shuriken passed by Naruto and Sakura with grace as the boy neared, the volley used to force the incoming sound nin on their location to stop and duck away. The moment Sai was at his left and Sakura at his right, Naruto began going through hand signs. Technically, all techniques could be done without hand signs. It wasn't easy, but the Nidaime Hokage was renowned for having made a 33 hand sign technique require only one, and the most skilled the shinobi, the less signs were required. However, more signs meant more ease in controlling the chakra outburst, which meant a stronger technique. 5 seals later, and Naruto's air blades were enhanced by 2 fireballs that created a veritable maelstrom of scorching fire in front of the trio of Chunin. The fire charred through both experiments and shinobi, taking into its fiery embrace of death also the farmers who had taken up arms to simply defend their homes. The screams would not be something easy to forget. In the midst of the battle, however, Naruto couldn't think about that. He had to survive by pushing himself down on the ground to avoid a swing of another bone club, and he had to roll back to avoid being stomped to the death. He had to pull Sai back by grabbing him by the shoulder and avoid suffering a kunai to the neck, just as he had to let himself be thrown away by Sakura from thin strands of wire that another enemy had used against him. They had to fight one with the other, and they had to trust one another. It was glorious and exhilarating. He felt adrenaline run through his body as he twisted sideways to avoid 3 kunai, only for Sai to tackle him to the ground and roll away as one of the 3 detonated. An explosive tag had been attached to it, probably. He barely managed to stand up that he realized one of the experiments had taken a swing against them, one that he could not dodge in time. Naruto sailed in the air, feeling his entire left side unresponsive and mushy from the sheer impact, before ending up with his right side cracking as he landed in pain against the wooden remains of the palisade. The barbed wire and the metal blades tore through his skin as he rolled against them, before landing in a shuddering mess on the ground, face down. Naruto! He heard a worried voice. Naruto! Was it getting farther away? Blood, he muttered. His gaze unfocused, as Naruto watched his blood falling on the ground and dripping down from his torn-apart body. He struggled to remain awake. He could hear the light chuckling sound of the Kyuubi behind his ears. He could feel the Ichibi's rotten corpse rise from beyond the seal, ready to take control of his slipping away mind, and then he saw the bone lance of an experiment coming down on him, just as a pink blur stood shakily in front of him, screaming to the top of her damaged voice, "You won't get him! You won't take him away from me, you understand?" The black blur to his other side was drawing furiously, but the pink blur was in danger. He wanted to do something. If he could grind the chakra, if he could. The thought gave him noise. He heard a strange grinding sound around him. He couldn't move his neck. It hurt too much. But he watched as the white blurred lance came crashing down against the pink blur, and was stopped by a giant yellow blur that looked like a floating hand. "Get!" he hissed out. "Away!" He choked on his own blood, which was pooling in his mouth as he had bitten his tongue from the effort to remain awake. The blurred form took back definition in Naruto's eyes, which were bleeding just like most of his body. "My teammate!" He roared that as the giant sand hand crushed through the experiment, and pushed him away before snapping him in half and tearing it apart with the same principle of creating wind. The monster did not stand up, as only grains of flesh and blood remained smeared on the sand that gently floated now in the air. "And Naruto?" The voice was further away now. Why was it getting away? "Hi, Naruto!" The voice was holding on his face with her hands. "Naruto! Answer me! Stay with us! Stay awake! You can't fall asleep now! Naruto! Stay with me! Please! Stay!" Blessed darkness captured his gaze, and Naruto Uzumaki exhaled. He found himself floating, in the midst of a pitch-black sea of ink. In that darkness, in that nothingness, he floated and felt himself growing heavy. He heard a slight chink coming from somewhere close to his chest, and as he gazed downwards he saw something so bright that it hurt his eyes. It was a chain, a golden chain made of chakra that looked golden, which pierced him through the stomach and seemed to be going upwards. There was another chink. A second chain of gold appeared too, slowly coiling down the first one like a snake before it plunged into his stomach without hurting him. He didn't understand. What had he been doing till then? Where was he? "I am the one who will establish peace and order." There was a voice now. It was deep, dark, and ominous. It felt twisted. It felt wrong. Destroy the village. Destroy Hashirama. It wasn't the voice of his father, but he had to follow it as if it were. It was wrong. "Fool demon! Be gone from our village. No wicked live here." The rapist was there. Why were they stopping him? "The sage is just a fairy tale, and you are just a demon. You will not take my son." But he was a murderer of hundreds. The daimyo is not a sinner, nor is he wicked. He was chosen by the heavens, and no one will listen to your words. "Demon, monster, prepare the archers. Call the armies." He was doing his duty. He was doing what the sage had asked. He wanted to bring peace to the world. Why were they not listening to him? "I am the Kyuubi, the bearer of humanity's hatred," he roared to the skies, as he cried his tears. Why must I be in this form, father? What have I done to displease you so much?" His claws were wicked, his eyes crimson and evil. His fur soaked in the red color of blood. "What have they done to us, father?" he whispered. "Where have my brothers gone, foul beast?" A female voice called to him. The figure had red hair, tied in buns, and was wearing a long sleeveless kimono. She held a no-futa in her hand and had tags as piercings. He didn't like her, but she smelled familiar. "You have destroyed the lives of hundreds for long enough. I have done what I was tasked to do by the sage himself, fool!" The Kyuubi roared. "Nothing your pathetic existence can understand, you abominable beasts, bearers of malice." He charged at her, and she charged back. A third golden chain came down with the first two, gently surrounding Naruto's body and beginning to pull him up. Barriers of gold and chains of chakra wounded his flesh and corroded his body. He roared and screamed, as more and more chains sprouted from the ground, the woods, the air itself. She hadn't come alone. He was shackled. He was chained. He had been doing his duty. He was torn to pieces. They tried to use him, but he was too strong for them. So he was merged in a single container. He was whole again. He broke the container. He escaped. He fought men whom he ate, and that ate him back. He was captured again. He was sealed again, in a living being. He made her suffer. She stopped listening. If you use your power, only hatred will come from it. Stay tranquil inside of me. He was sealed in another. He tried to make her suffer, but she knew not to listen. He had a duty. The world needed him. He had a duty. Naruto was lifted up outside of the darkness, and back in the light. He fell with his back against the water of his sewer-like mind, as giant torii gates of redwood held imprisoned the Kyuubi himself. Had he come out of his mouth? The Kyuubi had. He had tried to eat him, yet there was a female with red hair and buns, holding the mouth of the beast open with her chains and moving her hands as more and more torii gates fell down one after the other to entrap the tails of the fox. Finally, the chains surrounded the demon's mouth like a dog's muzzle, and the woman took a step back. She looked young, younger than he remembered. Naruto frowned. He had never seen the woman before. There was a moment of silence, as Naruto's eyes looked around. The Ichibi's rotting body was burning, as its chakra began to twist and pull itself apart before merging with the chakra chains that held the Kyuubi prisoner. I suppose, the woman's voice was soft, that presentations are in order, great-grandson. She turned to look at him, and he widened his eyes briefly. She had striking purple pupilless eyes, and her voice was stern but soft. I am Mito Uzumaki, wife of Hashirama Senju, and first Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. The Kyuubi growled from his spot. We will talk more away from here, Mito stated, grabbing Naruto's shoulder and transporting them away, back to where the gates of the seal were supposed to be, but were not. The seal, Naruto croaked, looking at the wide-open gates, torn from their hinges and laid on the ground. Indeed, Mito nodded sagely. It was torn apart. Your consciousness failed you, and when you lost yourself, the Ichibi possessed you. He always was able to commandeer those who fell asleep after all, but I could hold him back by holding the Kyuubi's chakra away, at least from him. When you fell grievously injured, I had to let the chakra of the demon run through your body, lest you died because of your wounds. He broke the seal then, and then, he ate you. Nice, Naruto drawled. I suppose I was fished out of his stomach? Indeed, Mito nodded once more. You are still alive, and while I do not know the state of your body, in your mind, for now, all will be tranquil. How much? He asked. I beg your pardon? How much life do I have left? Naruto whispered. After this stunt, how much life? You will probably live to see your grandchildren grow up, Mito replied firmly. It is not. The bastard lied on that too. Naruto groaned. He said I lost 90 years, meaning I would have until my 30s. Desperation breeds recklessness, Mito answered sagely. It is a common trick. Indeed, you have lost life, but you will still live to be that old. How old can an Uzumaki live, anyway? I married the first Hokage, and I was old when your mother came to Konoha to become the new Jinchuriki. That's… Naruto blinked. You're old, Granny? Mito's forehead sported a tick mark then, as she ground out. I am not old, I am venerable. That's still old, Granny. She smacked him on the head with a fan made of silk that appeared from one of her kimono's sleeves. Desist or I will smack you again. All right. Naruto chuckled. So what now? He asked, looking around. Where is the exit to this place? Mito simply sighed, before taking a step forward and hugging Naruto firmly. You can cry, child. Cry. Hi, Granny. I don't have to cry for nothing. Really, everything's fine. I'm alive and… he choked. I'm fine and… sure, Mito whispered. It's all right, she murmured. I will tell you something I told your mother. When she too cried for what her destiny was, she held Naruto firmly, as she spoke slowly. We are the vessel of the Nine Tails, but before that, we must find love and fill ourselves with it. What does it mean? Hatred can do nothing against love, Mito said. Kurama's ability, it ties to negative emotions. If those are countered, then he is powerless. If good emotions fill the vessel, then he can do nothing. But where is love in this world? Naruto asked firmly. There's only hell, and a slight variation of it, everywhere. Hush now, child, Mito remarked. Hell is only in your head, she said, ruffling his hair. There is good everywhere. There is love everywhere. You just need to open your eyes and see it. A world built only on malice cannot survive, you know? But there isn't only. I had to get a pessimist eventually, Mito sighed. Let me guess. There is evil in the world everywhere, lurking around the corner ready to slit my throat if I hope. And you know? You are right. There is. But just because there is, should we live all our life without feeling love and hope? Should we live all our life in agony and despair? Should we only feel hatred and revenge? There is love, there is peace, there is forgiveness. Naruto shuddered. Think about my words and sleep now, my wayward child, Mito softly spoke. You have earned it. And Naruto closed his eyes smiling, as he was still in the warm embrace of Mito, who gently caressed his locks as he slept, and for once, he actually felt loved. Sakura hadn't left Naruto's side since they had left the Otogekyo base, heading towards Demon Country. Not that it was smart to do so. Those who had survived the battle and seen her, well, they blamed her for the deaths of the civilians in the base. Even with Jiraiya, the most they had managed to do was to use one of his toad summons to hastily take those he could and hop away from there. The rest had been killed by the monsters. Children no older than 6 had probably turned to mush, mothers, grandmothers, the old and the unlucky young. Jiraiya filed it away in a corner of his mind, and decided never to dwell on it again. That was how he had coped through the war. After all, forget the dead. They are just statistics even when you are the one responsible for them rising. Sakura didn't even feel guilty about that. Her only reply was that Naruto had been in danger or that he needed her. Yugao had told him that the moment the radio communication had gone off, Guren's crystals, no doubt, she had all but been forced to clasp down on Sakura's wrist to avoid the girl barging in. The fact even Sai had tensed ready to follow her. It was borderline insubordination, especially because once Sakura had charged in, Sai had followed swiftly. Yugao's orders had fallen on deaf ears. He could now understand why Danzo had considered Sai a defective product. Such an action done by a root member? That was wrong on so many levels. Still, they were still out of Konoha. If they had to face disciplinary charges, they'd face them once back in the village. Till then, they had to reach Demon Country, and they had to do so carefully. Swamp Country was mostly uninhabited, but the next two, the Land of Claws and the Land of Fangs, were border nations and rivals most of the time. He had averted a war from breaking out there once, but he just hoped another hadn't started since he last checked. He gave one quick gaze to where Sakura stood, holding Naruto's body on her back and growling whenever someone who wasn't Sai tried to come closer. Even Sai had to actually fight the girl to get his turn on carrying Naruto. If he tries to poke my ass, I will drop him, Sai deadpanned then, eliciting another bout of inspiration for Jiraiya's muse. Now hand him over. No, Sakura grumbled. I can still carry him for another hour. You would be too tired then, Sai replied. I will risk my ass for him, this once. He blinked again. I wanted to add I already risk it more than once being with him, but that sounded dirty even for me, Cherry. I said I'll carry him, and I'll carry him. Sakura snapped back, growling at Sai, who simply looked back at her perplexed. Understood, Sakura? Yugao barked then, hand Naruto over, she pointed to herself. I will carry him now. The girl would have wanted to protest, but in the end she had to comply with her sensei. Soon, Yugao hefted Naruto on her back and sped up, watching with ill-conceived amusement as Sakura tried to keep up with her pace, looking halfway between affronted and grieving. Thankfully none of the Oto ninjas were stupid enough to try and fight them. They knew they had a chance of reaching a safe haven only for as long as Jiraiya guided them. Jiraiya was standing next to Hanzaki, when an orange-haired blur stopped in front of the column. Hanzaki! I can't find Kodohime-san. The girl, the one with the dark blue hat, was anguished as she spoke. She's probably dead, Sasami, Hanzaki whispered back. Sasami clenched her fists then. Why do we need their help? She said, gesturing towards Jiraiya. We can reach Demon Country alone. As Oto Shinobi, do you think the countries will let us through their borders easily without someone vouching for us? Hanzaki retorted. Then just drop the forehead protector. Sasami exclaimed. We should never have believed in Orochimaru to begin with. The man was wrong in his ways, Hanzaki replied. But he was not wrong in giving us somewhere to belong. Now more than ever we as a clan are united. Can you really spit upon that too? But Kodohime. She died doing her best for the clan. Hanzaki nodded firmly. As I would have done too that night. I don't like this, Sasami muttered as she moved towards the back of the marching column, her gaze moving from the civilians to the small empty circle that held the Konoha shinobi. She fixed her gaze on the raven-haired boy who was asleep, and a small wicked smile formed on her face. I don't like this at all, she said, just as, in another side of the world, Danzo Shimura said the exact same words while looking down at the map of the area. His operatives had not yet come back, but there were no signs of the invading army anywhere, unless they had grown wings or tunneled beneath the ground like the best of the IWA shinobi. Where did they go? He hissed, clenching the map, as his eyes, one dark and the other green, moved furiously around the possible formations and movements he could execute. I taught him, Danzo cussed. I shouldn't have taught him that well. You can't hide an army that big, he yelled, slamming his fist on the ground. Have the shinobi swipe the areas again. Send scouts to where the enemy was last seen, he murmured. There has to be something. Elsewhere, up in the skies, Orochimaru looked beneath him while holding a spyglass. Well then, men! He exclaimed, feeling slightly jubilant. All shinobi, to battle stations. His army roared its agreement, as the cannons of the land of the sky prepared themselves for a devastating and deadly volley. Cannons charged? A moment of silence. Primed? Another moment of silence. Hebe, do give the order to open fire and slaughter that village over there, would you? He said then, gesturing to his assistant who was holding the spyglass now, as Orochimaru-sama had given it back to her. But, Hebe, open fire! She squeaked. Louder, Hebe, louder, Orochimaru tututade. They can't hear you. They're stupid, you have to scream the order. And thus Hebe breathed in and out slowly, calming her beating heart for a moment, before she finally screamed it out, pointing her finger forward. Open fire! And chaos ensued. Chapter 37. The Darkness Rises. It was lunchtime, and Naruto had yet to move a muscle. Sakura was worried. The refugee column had taken a rest. The civilians weren't used to running long distances, and what was supposed to be a week's worth of travel for the shinobi was becoming a month long, with civilians being towed sometimes by the shinobi. She watched with keen eyes the movement of the sound ninjas who walked close by. She couldn't trust them. They were a danger to her and her pack. Naruto was sleeping softly. His breathing was strangely soothing, because it told Sakura one important thing: he was still alive. He had taken a near-fatal hit, and it was a miracle he still breathed. Nobody except her sensei had touched him to treat his wounds, and even looking at him now one could see just what the extents of the injuries were. His entire left side was tightly plastered, with bandages and gauzes to hold his bits and pieces together. His right side was wounded, but not much so. There was a slight dusting of sand on his wounds, which was stained red from his blood. It was unnatural. Naruto never remained wounded for long. His skin was always unblemished, his smile always ready to sprout when he looked at her or sigh. There never was a moment where he remained wounded, on the ground, down, dead. No! That was a bad thought. Naruto was not dead, and he was not going to die. He had saved her again, with sand, but he was not dead. No. She had protected him, and he had protected her. There was no way he could be dead. It was just that an immobile Naruto was something she couldn't understand. She had failed him. She should have been quicker, she should have been stronger still, to stop those monsters and keep them away. She had fought, but she had just worsened the situation. But her teammate had been in danger, and she was not feeling remorse for her actions. She had done well. The soft footsteps that approached made her wary, but they belonged to Sai, and so she calmed down. I brought food, Sai remarked, handing over one of the rice cakes that had been the only thing consumed since the beginning of their march. She understood it was the land of the rice fields, but only rice-based products was starting to sicken her. Was it too much to ask for a fish, or some meat? What of Naruto? He nudged to a canteen to his side. Mushed rice. Of course, Sakura sighed. She was starting to find the prospect of cabbage soup, an horrid invention of an evil mastermind, something delicious and to dream of at night, when compared to all the rice delicacies that so apparently filled the mind of rice-field country's citizens. Has Dickless woken up? Sai asked, looking to the prone form of his teammate. No, Sakura shook her head. I'm worried. He's usually awake after a few hours. It's been 2 days. Dickless will be fine, Sai replied. If Death is a female, he'll have her in his harem soon. He doesn't have a harem, Sakura rebuffed him gently. Hey, do you need anything? I'm fine, Sai shrugged. He hadn't even been wounded. I wonder, Sakura murmured. They say that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Shouldn't Naruto be invincible? No one is invincible, Sai replied. Do you want to rest? Will you guard us? She looked towards Naruto. Sai nodded and turned his gaze to watch the rest of the Odo shinobi. Sakura lowered herself against Naruto, placing her left arm beneath his neck and bringing her face close to his cheek. She closed her eyes and calmly fell asleep, letting the tip of her nose touch his cheek. It was in that moment that Naruto opened his eyes. He did not speak. He just opened his eyes and watched the sky, the clouds, the bright blue, and then he saw Sai's back standing guard probably and a tint of pink in the corner of his eye. He slowly moved his head to have a clearer look, and came face to face, once more, with those emerald eyes that belonged to Sakura. She had woken up feeling movement, and her eyes were now wide open. We must stop meeting like this, he croaked out. Naruto, Sakura breathed out as she hugged him tightly, making him wince and hiss in pain. Naruto, yeah, he coughed out. Yes, Sakura, it's my name. You're hurting me. Please. I need air, Sakura. Sakura. Air. He coughed once more, before Sakura sheepishly let go of her tight hug, but remained hooked to him, nuzzling against the side of his neck. I was scared, she muttered. Why do you always scare me like this? She huffed. It's not fair. Dickless, Sai nodded to him. I will warn the Taisho and Sensei. Catch. The boy threw the canteen with the mushed rice to Sakura, who grabbed it with agility without even a second thought. Sai left then, leaving behind his two teammates. Oh, right, Sakura murmured as she slowly uncorked the canteen and gave a hesitant sniff. Ugh, how long was I out? Naruto asked. And where are we now? We're moving towards swamp country, Sakura replied. You've been out for 2 days, she added. Listen, Naruto, I'm sorry. He raised an eyebrow. For what? You saved me once more, she exhaled. And Sai too, he thinks you took the blow for him. I did my job, Naruto replied sheepishly. Where's my Chunin vest? Sensei had to remove it as well as most of your clothes, Sakura stammered out. She had to treat your wounds, she added then softly. Is that why I can't feel my left side? Naruto croaked. What's the damage? Sakura hesitated, her eyes looking around as if hoping someone else could answer that question. Hi, Naruto whispered. It's fine, really. You have a lousy definition of fine, Naruto, Sakura exhaled out, sounding defeated. Your arm was mushed, your left ribcage shattered, and it was a miracle the floating ribs didn't pierce your lungs or heart. Your stomach was perforated. You were bleeding internally so badly Sensei had no idea what to do with you. Then you suddenly started to heal, and we thought it was over, but her voice trailed off. It suddenly stopped again. So, how am I now? Your left arm is inoperable at present, Naruto, Yugao quipped as she neared them from the side. Sakura nearly jumped. She hadn't heard her sensei arrive. But you should be able to walk within the end of the week. I suppose you'd want to be carried by Sakura still? Sakura's face took on the same tint as her hair. Naruto raised a puzzled eyebrow. What about Sai? Dickless, Sai remarked calmly. When you're awake, you are a danger to my behind. Naruto coughed out a dry chuckle, which then became a fit of coughing that had Sakura bring her left hand to rest on his shoulder, squeezing it gently. How can I be a danger if I'm without a dick? He retorted back. Sai remained quiet for a moment. The pale-skinned boy blinked, turning thoughtful. He looked about to say something, his mouth open, when he closed it again and returned to think. I think you broke Sai, Sakura whispered, not low enough to go unheard by the rest of the team. Look at him, he's trying so hard. It's kind of cute, really, Naruto retorted with a smirk. He's flapping about like a fish. Yugao shook her head slowly. She tapped Sai's shoulder. Don't worry about finding a comeback. Just admit defeat. Finally, Sai's eyes lit up. It's because you use a strap-on. You know, Sakura sighed, shaking her head. You should have just accepted defeat gently. Yugao-sensei checked Naruto's bandages, before nodding to herself. Yes, they're coming along nicely. Not as fast as usual, though. Are you alright, Naruto? Yeah, he winced as the lie came out smoothly. I'm alright. Understood, Yugao nodded. Very well, we're breaking camp in 2 hours, so you can catch up on what happened while you were knocked out. Sensei? Naruto hesitated, biting his lips slightly. Can I ask you something? Yes? In private? Sakura frowned. Sai said nothing. Yugao merely nodded and gave a quick glance to Naruto's teammates, and after a brief moment of glaring between Sakura and Yugao, the two Chunin left. What is it, Naruto? What will happen to Sakura and Sai? Yugao breathed in slowly, before answering calmly. Sakura acted without waiting for orders, endangering not only herself but her teammates, and making a situation worse for no gain towards Konoha. If she is lucky, she will be reprimanded and brought back down to genin rank, while being moved to another team. Sai followed his teammate, but he can be considered as having simply tried to stop her, and will get off lightly. Naruto's eyes widened in shock. But, Naruto, Yugao's eyes narrowed. She went against a direct order from her superior on the battlefield. Orders are absolute to shinobi. She betrayed that. And what if she didn't? Naruto asked then. What if I asked her to come? You didn't, and the report has already been sent. Yeah, but I wasn't awake. What if I have a mean of communication that is private between us? Yugao closed her eyes and exhaled. What you are asking me to do is shift the blame to you, right? I'm the Jinchuriki of Konoha, sensei, Naruto chuckled grimly. They won't say shit to me. There was a lack of working comms from inside, so I sent through the private mean of communication a request for immediate help. We didn't tell you about it, so I'm the one at fault for not having included you. But I know you have such a mean, Yugao remarked. And listen, Naruto, if you cover for her, and she does this again, she won't, Naruto said then. I swear, sensei, I'll make sure she doesn't do this again, Yugao sighed. She looked to the side where a few meters away Sakura was fidgeting together with Sai, straining her neck as if trying to listen in. Only this once, Naruto, she retorted. And this, we don't talk about this ever again. Understood, sensei, Naruto nodded slowly. Thank you, he shyly added, bowing his head. The Umbujounen simply smiled at that, and ruffled the boy's hair. Don't make it a habit. Sai had been watching the scene unfold calmly. 2 seconds later, and he was slowly walking backwards from Sakura. Her hair was slowly rising, as chakra lapsed around her head like a crown of flames. Her eyes were cold and steely, as she clenched both hands to her sides and ground her teeth furiously. Pedophile bitch, Guren sneezed. Lurid cradle robber. Guren sneezed again. Doesn't she already have a boyfriend? What is it? Does she want to try someone younger? Sakura muttered murderously. Naruto's mine, she grunted out, crossing her arms over her chest. She looked down for a moment, giving a brief glance at her assets. Maybe it's the breasts. Is bigger better? Sai had meanwhile kept on walking backwards. He was pretty much halfway on the other side of camp by then, but he still wasn't sure it was a safe distance. Sai. Do you have? Sakura's eyes turned to where Sai was supposed to be, only to find out he wasn't there. Fine, never mind, she grumbled, returning to watch Naruto act shyly. It was so cute, having his head slightly down and with his cheeks reddish. Then the bitch ruffled Naruto's hair. Bitch. Bitch. Pedophile wrench. Bitch. Cradle robber. Child snatcher. Guren kept on sneezing for a while. Are you alright, Guren-san? A timid voice asked near her. Yes, Yukimaru, I'm fine, she smiled back. I think it might just be someone talking about me. I hope they're saying nice things about you, Guren-san, Yukimaru said shyly. Guren puffed her chest out. Of course they are. Who wouldn't? Sakura finished her tirade when her sensei finally finished acting like some sort of Turio whore with Naruto, and gestured to her, and Sai, who had apparently returned back to Naruto, together with Jiraiya, who was in the process of writing down a few notes on his notepad. There was a large Ika, Forbidden Young Love, first draft written on the cover of the notepad. Naruto, Jiraiya said firmly, looking around to make sure no one was eavesdropping on them. Did something happen with the Kyuubi? Naruto blinked. Uzumaki have a high vitality, he remarked. Not nigh infinite regeneration. That's the Kyuubi's chakra at work, and now it's gone, so something happened. Yes, he bitterly muttered, his gaze moving from Jiraiya to the clouds. Something happened, and? The Sannin insisted. He won't be a problem for a while. That's not what I wanted to hear, Naruto, Jiraiya sighed. Listen, with the war coming, you will need to learn how to harness the Kyuubi's chakra and, out of question, Jiraiya-sama, Naruto interrupted the Toad Sage. Any amount of chakra used, and he gains control, a little bit at time is all he needs to break free. The Yondame's seal is solid, Jiraiya rolled his eyes. There's no way it could break through. The Yondame's seal was not closed, Naruto snarled back at the Toad Sage. It leaked the Kyuubi's chakra willingly in me, he narrowed his eyes, while it shouldn't have. Minato knew what he was doing, Jiraiya rebuffed him. And it's unheard of a Jinchuriki who can't control his bija. Then I'll be the first, Naruto said. And the seal, he shuddered. The seal's gone. Jiraiya looked old and senile, but he wasn't a Sannin for nothing. The moment Naruto's gone had been uttered, the Sannin had already ripped apart the boy's vest to check on it, after pushing the boy down and making him scream in pain from the push. Hi! Sakura exclaimed, trying to tackle the man away but failing miserably as she was swatted away like a fly. The pink-haired girl went tumbling, while Sai merely stood watching the scene, before remarking, Jiraiya-sama, please refrain from raping my teammate. I'm not raping him! The old man exclaimed affronted. I'm just checking his seal. Non-consensual touching is rape, Sai replied firmly. You cannot use your rank as Sannin to abuse shinobi of Konoha. It's in the shinobi regulations. They actually made a law for that. The sage looked affronted. Hokage-sama deemed it a necessary precaution for a 60-years-old pervert, Sai replied as if he was quoting someone. Damn the old geezer, Jiraiya cursed under his breath. Ouch, Naruto whispered. Sakura's face turned angrily towards the Sannin after that. You're hurting him. She accused the sage. Can't you see that? I know what I'm doing, Jiraiya rebuked her, before moving his hands across the ink seal on Naruto's stomach, which was slowly fading away. It's impossible, he retorted. There is a need for a key to completely open it. I know, Minato gave me the key to the seal. There is no way the seal could be completely opened without it. The seal was overpowered, Naruto said slowly. It wasn't opened. It was shattered. That's impossible, Jiraiya shook his head. The Kyuubi would have had to get exponentially stronger since the sealing, or your seal needed to be weakened tremendously for it to happen, and there's no way it could have. His voice died down. Orochimaru, the sage whispered. No, the man shook his head. He couldn't have. You two never met, did you? Naruto frowned. No, we didn't. Good, the sage sighed. It must be the Kyuubi then, I suppose, he exhaled. The Hokage will have to know about this. How are you keeping him down? It's a fail-safe of the seal, Naruto replied. It completely blocks him. So, we have a Jinchuriki who can't use his bijou, Jiraiya grimaced. I'll have to draw a seal on you to make sure you can actually use his chakra. Why? Sakura asked, her hands hovering over Naruto's chest protectively. Why can't you leave him alone? Konoha needs its weapon. Sai was the one who spoke firmly and without inflection. Without it, there can be no peace. Sai. Sakura was shocked, and as she clenched her right hand to her chest and gritted her teeth, she had a hurtful look on her face, as if she had been betrayed. You can't believe that too, can you? That is the will of the Hokage, Sai replied truthfully. That is the will of the clans, of the Anbu, of the shinobi. Konoha needs its weapon, he looked at Sakura. It's the truth. Well, since you aren't moving anywhere for a week, I'll take care of it, Jiraiya muttered, interrupting the tense silence that had slowly seeped in around the Konoha team. I'll ride it on your back. It should be enough to keep the beast at bay if I make one that covers all of it. You'll have to go shirtless until the ink dries, but, Jiraiya-sama, we're moving north, Yuga muttered. And we're in October. It's not like we'll hit a mountain by the end of the week with the pace we're going at, the Sannin retorted. And he'd have to stay shirtless for small bouts in the day, not 24 hours for an entire week. Yugao still seemed unconvinced, but Sakura was the one who solved the problem. Naruto? Do you want it? She asked Naruto, who had been keenly listening in silence at Sai's words, and then at Jiraiya's. He closed his eyes for a moment to think. If he said no, then maybe Yugao-sensei would do nothing for Sakura, or maybe she would do it anyway, but the rest of Konoha would end up in a war because he would not be able to control the Kyuubi. If he said yes, he would have to, eventually, deal with the Kyuubi once more. Then again, he wasn't doing this for himself. He was doing this for the others. He'd be a bright example of light in a world of darkness, and he'd be won by doing the right thing rather than the easy one. His hands would have trembled, if he could have moved them. He was scared, but wasn't courage all about facing one's own fear? All right, he exhaled. Jiraiya grimly nodded to his words before starting to prepare his ink and his brush. Well, we have a few hours of rest, so we better get started. Grit your teeth, he advised as he deftly turned Naruto on his stomach. Naruto hissed in pain but said nothing more. Sakura watched the scene unfold with her hands clasped together, as her right foot was grounding against the dirt in small concentric patterns. Ahai, a voice called to her, making her spin around to look for the owner. Your teammate woke up. The girl who spoke was the orange-haired girl with the dark blue wool cap. Sakura narrowed her eyes. Who wants to know? Sasami Fuma, the girl retorted angrily. And I was just worried. There's no need to act so stuck up, Konoha-nin. There is no need to be worried, Otogekure-nin, Sakura grinned back nervously. Why don't you just go back to the hole you crawled out from? Sasami's eyes widened briefly, before they narrowed in suspicion. Don't you even feel a bit of remorse? Sasami asked then, looking straight at Sakura's eyes. Your actions, you killed many of my friends because of them. They were a menace to my team, Sakura hissed. They attacked us. They attacked you because you attacked them first. Sasami angrily spat back. Have some shame. If it isn't one of my teammates, why should I care? Sakura rebuked her. In this world everyone looks out for himself. Why don't you grow up? TCH. Sasami spat at Sakura's feet. You're an eyesore Konoha bitch, and you're probably a no-good whore. The pink-haired Chunin spat right back at the girl. You're just a murderer for hire, you have no soul, and you're a failure of a bitch that should be drowned. Sai watched the two girls suddenly stop talking, but coldly start to eye each other with a look akin to a silent verbal spar. Slowly, they began to circle one another. What's your problem anyway? Sad there's not Orochimaru to torture you up? And what's your chip on the shoulder? Your teammates are so much trash that you need to. Sakura began to growl. Never. Insult. My teammates. Fists only, Yugao stated firmly, as she suddenly found herself next to Sai. On the other side, Hanzaki exhaled and in the end nodded towards Sasami. It was all that it took the two girls to lounge at one another. Sakura tried to punch with her right fist Sasami's stomach, only for the girl to deftly sidestep and swing her own arm to hook with Sakura's neck. Sakura bowed down to avoid the grip, bringing her left hand to slam into the sides of the Otogekyo kunoichi. Sasami's knee rose up, slamming into Sakura's face before the girl finished bringing the right hand up to strike at the enemy kunoichi in the stomach. The Otogekyo girl let Sakura go as the fist connected like a solid slug of steel. The two took their distances, their guards now up. Bitch, whore, is that all you can do? Sasami spat out. Too busy looking pretty? And what about you? What's with that blue hat? Your brain's empty and it catches cold quickly? It's a fight, not a talking match, Sai deadpanned. Cherry, finish her. With pleasure, Sakura grinned as she screamed, before charging in fist held up high. Sasami smirked at the visible opening in the girl's defense, and as she brought her left fist to slam home, Sakura was the one who actually smiled sweetly before spinning to the left and using the elbow to knock the wind out of the girl. The moment Sasami kneeled down, Sakura grabbed the girl's hair with her hand and, pay back, bitch. She slammed her knee against Sasami's face, before pulling her hair back and slapping the Otogekyo kunoichi with both of her hands. She then proceeded to pounce on her, straddling the now hazy enemy. This, Sakura spat out a dribble of blood from her mouth as she spoke, is why you don't mess with me. All right. Yugao's hand deftly caught Sakura's wrist before she could pummel the girl's face to mush. It's enough. You've got it all out of your system? You hit like a pussy, Sasami coughed out weakly from the ground. Sakura stood up, casually letting her knee grind a bit in Sasami's now tender stomach before averting her gaze sheepishly from her sensei's sight. Yes, sensei, Sakura answered to Yugao, ignoring the wounded Otogekyo kunoichi who two Oto shinobi carried away slowly. Next time, Cherry, Sai said as Sakura moved closer to him. Fight in the mud. Trying to insist on perverted jokes won't make your previous words any less heavy, Sai, the pink-haired genin whispered. Are you certain about your words? She asked then hesitantly. Like, really certain? Sai frowned, before finally nodding grimly. All shinobi are tools for war. Jinchuriki even more. It is highly possible that should he fail to control the Kyuubi, his voice was but a whisper now, as he slowly moved back to Naruto's side. He would be killed, the demon extracted and placed into a new host. The Hokage would never do that, Sakura remarked. The Hokage. Sai's voice lowered itself. Probably would vote the petition himself. Sakura froze on the spot, watching Sai's back as it moved further away from her. Her face was flaring up from the pain, and her skin was probably even then marring because of the bruises, but to those words, she couldn't help but still. The question wasn't why Sai had spoken with certainty. The question was how he could effortlessly believe in something like that. Hiruzen Sarutobi's hands trembled as he read the report. His eyes widened in fear and his breathing grew erratic. The land of the sky was back? He remembered it. He remembered having to ally with all the other nations to tear it down. He remembered that technology of the old world, that power, that sheer magnificence of destruction. Moreover, he knew they had all vowed to hide it from the others. They had all vowed to keep the location of where it had crashed a secret, to let the ocean claim the spoils of it forever. What use would there be for ninjas, if flying machinery could tear apart buildings? What use would there be for shinobi villages, if one could find them by flying in the sky? What need was there for walls, when the attacks came from above them? Why pay the ninjas, when one could pay the land of the sky itself? Send a message to the couriers, Sarutobi whispered. Orochimaru has the land of the sky, and it is operational once more. The Sandaime shuddered. Send another message to Mifune of the land of iron. Induct a meeting on private grounds of all the Kage. The old Sandaime paled visibly then. And what of Danzo? Danzo-sama remained behind, the Umbu replied. He bought us time to run. That stupid old man, Hiruzen clenched his fists. You've got your orders. You're dismissed. As the last of the Umbu left, Hiruzen looked at the reports with a heavy and ragged breathing, his hands still shaking from the effort of giving his orders. The casualties were staggering. It hadn't been a mobilization, but half a mile of ground had been vaporized into nothingness. They talked of the Kage and the S-rank shinobi as one-man armies, but to do such a feat in so little, to do such an action with but the push of a button, Orochimaru had to have gone mad. There was no other explanation. There really was no other reason that could explain why he, who had been so vehemently opposed to capturing the land, suddenly had changed his mind. It wasn't shinobi-like, those had been his words, and yet now, why? Why had he gone against his very words? Orochimaru would have never done something like that. Why did his student, the one he had loved dearly as his own child, why would he do this? There was no choice in the matter. He had to give the Kage Bunshin technique to Naruto. He had to have him devote his entire time to training, to fighting, to learning how to kill. There simply wasn't another way now. The threat was too great, too mighty, and it was too horrible. Hiruzen gritted his teeth as a strong pain flared through his chest. His heartbeat grew erratic for a moment, and then he suddenly stopped feeling. He fell limp, his face down against the wooden desk as life left his body and murky darkness covered his eyes. He had fought to his very last breath. He had battled against everything, but the Shinigami was not a patient god. "Ah," he murmured. "So," he whispered, "I'm coming, Biwako." With those words, Hiruzen Sarutobi, Kami of Shinobi, the professor, died. Orochimaru watched with a bored and dispassionate look Shino's rambling about how Konoha was meant to be destroyed first. He raised an eyebrow. Was the man really thinking he wasn't going to destroy that village? "Orochimaru-sama," a snake whispered to his ear, having slowly slid on his shoulder. It happened. The garden snake dispersed in smoke a moment later, just as Orochimaru stood up from his seat in the conference room deeply rooted within the land of the Sky headquarters. "Orochimaru? Where are you going?" Shino asked, perplexed. "We must discuss." Silence. The snake Sannin spat back, raising his left hand. "I have to go." He left a shocked doctor behind, but he couldn't care less about it. The garden snake had been clear. Hiruzen Sarutobi, his sensei, he was no more. He supposed the old man could have foreseen the snake in his garden belonging to him, but then again he had never acted upon that knowledge. Orochimaru had said nothing, and as such, well, he had always an eye on the Sarutobi's compound garden, where his sensei began to sip tea tranquilly during the late afternoon and the night, just as he did the same in Otogekure or around the world. Was the old man expecting him to drink tea with him? Was he the believer of some sort of soul connection throughout space? He didn't believe in that, but Orochimaru still drank his tea at the same time as the old man did. Now he was dead. His body would rot in the earth, the muscles would decay, the bones would grind to dust. The maggots would fill his flesh and plant eggs, which would then birth larvae that later would become maggots once more. The cycle of life, that putrid excuse that passed for balance in a world that was rotten to the core. He would tear it apart with his own hands. He wasn't doing this for himself. No, he remembered when it had started. It hadn't been for him. It hadn't been for the death of his parents, for the desire to bring them back. No, it had been because his sensei had lost his light after the death of his wife. That had made him start the research. He wanted to make a perfect gift for his sensei. All he received back for his effort was exile, and he had taken it. Nobly he had decided to sacrifice himself so that the others would not suffer. There was no reason to look for a why. He was a twisted individual, and that much would suffice as an excuse. It wasn't because of his sensei's wife, or because of Tsunade's lover and younger brother that he had begun experimenting. It wasn't because of Jiraiya and his hurt at never saying those precious words to the woman he had loved. It wasn't because there was so much suffering in the world that he had begun looking for a cure to it, for a solution to death. It wasn't because of that. He was Orochimaru, and he was twisted. He was evil for no other reason but evil itself. He repeated that, time and time again, until he grew to believe it. Yet he could not keep that up now, in this moment. His sensei was dead. The one who had been there in the place of his parents, who had consoled him, taught him, who had been a willing shoulder on which to cry. He was dead, and he had never been able to tell him the words he had meant to, the words. Orochimaru clenched his fists, and slammed them against the wall of his office, the metallic sheen twisting as his hands delved deep into the alloy. He had shed blood for his village. He had infiltrated Kumogakure, made the Hachibi rampage throughout the village, killing young and old at the same time, only to end the war sooner, to force Kumo into submission. He had done that which Tsunade had refused to do, and which Jiraiya had screamed against his sensei for. He had done what he had to for his village. He had done well, hadn't he? Have I done well? He whispered to the wall. Tell me, sensei, am I still human? He asked once more, looking at his hand. He screamed as he tore apart the corpse he inhabited, emerging as the white snake, the monster he had become. Am I still human? He snarled, as he tore with his teeth against his own flesh. Blood splattered around the room, dark and rotting. Purple fumes began to rise from it, slowly obscuring from view the bleeding form of Orochimaru's true form. Were my sacrifices in vain, sensei? A low raspy chuckle escaped the snake's lips. Are sacrifices worthy of being let go? He chuckled louder. Should I let my sacrifices be in vain? The fumes dispersed, as Orochimaru walked out once more inside the corpse of his host. No. He snarled as he opened the door and closed it behind him. No sacrifice will ever be in vain. He closed his eyes as he stepped through the damp and dark corridors, walking towards the area where his men were. There was a wide courtyard filled with mannequins and benches, where many of his shinobi were talking one with the other. As he arrived, they all stilled as mice caught by the snake, and watched him with bated breath, probably trying to figure out why he had come there. His eyes fell on Hebe, who was sheepishly trying to launch a kunai against a wooden mannequin resembling a shinobi, with two big red circles over the heart and the head. Her entire posture was wrong, probably self-taught, and yet not a single shinobi or kunoichi had moved forward to help her. He supposed that was to be expected. He slowly made his way silently behind her, and then waited. He watched her try. She tried it once. She tried it twice, thrice. Fourth time she threw a kunai only for it to bounce off against the walls to the sides of the mannequin she was supposed to hit. She was down to a single kunai. When he made a gentle coughing noise, the girl didn't turn. Don't distract me, please, she whispered. I have to do this. He raised an eyebrow and remained quiet. At least one, she seemed to be pleading God. At least once. Hebe threw the kunai then, and just by looking at it going, it was clearly off trajectory. The girl dropped her shoulders down and turned, only to freeze and widen her eyes at Orochimaru's appearance. Orochimaru-sama, she squeaked, before remembering what she had said before. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Orochimaru's pinky finger twitched, and a small gust of wind redirected the kunai to hit the bullseye of the mannequin's heart. Looks like you hit once, the snake sage said then, gesturing for her to turn around. She frowned, and then she spun to stare at the kunai firmly stuck in the mannequin's breast. No, she shook her head. I didn't. She whispered, Are you calling me a liar, girl? What's fair is fair, Orochimaru-sama. I didn't hit it. You did. How can I be a kunoichi of Konoha if I can't hit a bullseye by myself? The orphan's eyes were pleading him not to help her but just to let her practice by herself. She wanted to become better alone, without help. He was intrigued. We are shinobi, we should cheat, he had replied, but not on training. I have to be honest with myself at least. How am I going to pass the genin exam? I need that money and I suck at kunai throwing. I'll never get that part down in time, and what if they send me to the front? But this I have to do it on my own. I can't cheat of my training. Please don't kill me, Orochimaru-sama, Hebe whimpered. I'm sorry. I don't want to be a weight, please. Her cheeks were red and her eyes puffy, as her lips quivered while she stared at the snake Sannin who could kill her with ease. Orochimaru did not answer. He simply turned around and moved to leave. Hebe remained there puzzled, up until the snake sage stilled in mid-walk. Your posture is completely wrong, he said, before palming a kunai from his sleeve and throwing it deftly. It soared in the air and struck straight through the hand of a kunoichi who had been whispering about how Hebe would get it for being a failure. The kunoichi did not scream, but she did pale and hold the wrist of her wounded hand, before foam began to form in her mouth as she died from the poisonous toxin. That is how you throw a kunai, Orochimaru said once more. Have someone in here teach you. If they refuse, I can always use some target practice. Then he left the courtyard. He actually wondered as he left and headed towards the laboratories. What was his old student doing now? Anko Mitarashi was holding on to the body of Danzo Shimura. As kilometers beneath the land of the sky, the two of them evaded their pursuers' attacks. Well, she was the one doing the dodging since the old man was too wounded to move much, thus she had to carry him. The creepy thing was the face of the first Hokage sporting from his wounded arm. That and the Sharingan eyes that nested into the arm closed all but one. She wasn't going to remark on it, especially because they were escaping from a highly superior force composed of troops belonging to a strange and old clan that had some grudge with Danzo himself, apparently. They would reach Konoha in a few weeks, and yet she didn't know if she was going to make it, especially if she had to carry the great old lump of weight on her shoulders. Leave me here, the old shinobi said firmly. Listen, Taicho, Anko remarked as she jumped downwards, avoiding a crescent blade of wind that soared in the air and neatly cut apart a few branches. Not that I mind, but, are you sure? Take my arm and go, Danzo replied. Do not let the Sharingan fall in enemy hands. And what about you? Let's face it, you were tasked by Hiruzen to assassinate me if I proved disloyal to Konoha. Just leave me here and take the eye from my arm. Only the eye, and how am I going to do that? Konoha's weeks away and the eye will rot unless. Do what you must, he snarled. She didn't let the man repeat himself twice. She gouged the Sharingan eye, dropping Danzo behind and giddily starting to run away, leaving the Yami of Shinobi down as if he was nothing more than extra baggage. She was going to have a Sharingan now. Everything would be better after that. Oh, she was going to become as strong as Kakashi, the bastard. Behind her, Danzo exhaled slowly as he let himself drop against the tree trunk. His back ached, his entire body felt heavy. He had used his Izanagi too many times to give time to the recon teams to leave. He had attracted the enemy Nin's attentions, and had fought and tore them down from the skies with the use of his wind techniques and summons. But even he had his limits. Now, the past finally caught up to him. Hanyasha, the Umbu of the land of wood that once was a nation by itself near Konoha's border, from whom he had gleaned the secret of dissociating oneself from the body, and that he had implemented alongside many other techniques into his root training. Then, as the final test, his root forces had annihilated their country, making Konoha merge with it. Now there they were, those who had survived, patiently encircling him. His past was there, and now was the time to face it. Danzo, the leader, smiled. It's been a while, Hayato, Danzo coughed. I knew I should have burned your corpse to make sure. We have come for you, old crone, Hayato said gleefully. How does it feel? Can you believe the irony of the situation? Come on then, Danzo smiled. Help an old man up. Hayato did so, before nodding to one of the men standing in semicircle. The man walked forward, removing his demon-like mask to show the same feature as those of Danzo, down to every little nick and wound. Orochimaru wanted a body as proof, Hayato remarked as he silently nodded once more to the man that so vividly resembled the Yami of Shinobi. There was a swift movement, and then the body double committed seppuku in front of them, his head rolling down on the ground as blood gushed to cover his clothes with it. So dies the Yami of Shinobi, Danzo remarked quietly. Where will Orochimaru pick us up? In the land of wind, Hayato replied smoothly, grinning slightly at Danzo's puzzled look. I see, the Yami of Shinobi nodded slightly once. Then I suppose there is no longer a need for this. With his free hand, blades of wind slashed at the arm created with Hashirama's cells. The arm twitched as it fell in midair, before slowly erupting into a giant tree that grew up to the point where it rivaled those nearby. Stemming the bleeding with his remaining hand, Danzo's eyes settled over the horizon where the sun was falling. The shadow is stronger at dusk, the Yami of Shinobi quipped. Is that the saying about the Kage being stronger the more there is a need for them? In part, Danzo remarked as he began to bandage his wound before using his teeth to tightly compress the gauze. It's a Nara proverb. Some say the shadow is stronger just before dawn, but what they all seem to forget. Danzo exhaled as he checked the bandage once more, before deeming it fit enough for him to march. Is that in the night between dusk and dawn darkness rules supreme? Chapter 38, The Light Dies. The land of claws had deep crevices and fissures that naturally formed from the multiple rivers that crossed from the land of fangs. The fact that the rivers then connected with the sea, while the entirety of the land of fangs was actually like a rocky cliff into the ocean, was what had begun tensions between the two close lands. The land of claws demanded a tariff to the boats that passed to reach the sea, and the land of fangs refused on the basis that the rivers began in their land, and thus meant it was theirs. Across the many rivers and chasms, however, there stood stone or wood bridges to connect one side of the country to the other or to its neighboring nations. The bridges were also natural choke points, which meant that they were also natural ambush sites. That was probably what had made Jiraiya wary enough to separate the group in order to cover most of the column. Naruto was at the end of the column, with the elderly and the young as well as with Hanzaki. A few kids of barely 10 were walking alongside him, every now and then asking questions about what it meant to be a shinobi. Sakura was at the head of the column, together with Yugao-sensei. Some distance would do her good had been the sensei's words, and only after Naruto had acquiesced had Sakura strived to obey it. Naruto grimaced at the thought of Sakura's face. She had looked hurt and betrayed. As he walked, one of the kids asked, his brown hair tied in a ponytail and his brown eyes shining with mirth, the beauty of innocence packed into a small body, and with a sweet smile to boot. Nay, Ninja-san. The boy was smiling as he spoke. Do you think we'll be happy where we're going? Naruto blinked, before nodding hesitantly. He had little experience with people being happy no matter what the situation was. I hope so. Good. So my mom will stop crying now, the boy frowned. My dad's gone ahead, that's what my mom says. You think he's already found us a place to stay? Naruto inwardly looked around, before finally settling on a diplomatic answer. I'm sure he has, Naruto grimaced as he turned his gaze towards the back. There had been no subsequent attacks from the monsters, which was strange. There should have been something at the very least during the night, but nothing. So, do you think the house will be big? The boy asked with a toothy grin. Like really big? With 4 rooms or maybe even 5? Yes, Naruto nodded. I'm sure the house will be big. And do you think I'll become a shinobi strong like you then? The boy asked once more, eyes twinkling. Naruto mentally groaned. Where was the button to mute him? Yes, he ground out. Now I'm trying to do my job, can you be quiet, please? The boy quieted down immediately, albeit sniffling. Naruto frowned as he gave one more look around. It was as if the trouble had disappeared. That couldn't be good. Trouble never went away. It just moved somewhere else to strike harder. His ears strained to hear the sounds beyond those of the other children asking him questions about Konoha or if he was in a relationship with someone. That came from a shy 8-year-old girl. He shook his head. He was being paranoid for no reason. There wasn't an intelligence behind the monsters, so there simply was no way they'd know where to attack. Sai appeared next to him after a few minutes of walk, his pale appearance marred by a bruise to the side of his cheek. Cherry slapped me. What did you do? Naruto sighed. I told her you were old enough to take care of yourself, Sai remarked. Well, I might have said something about you being able to choose your own harem girls. I don't have a harem, Naruto sighed. Jiraiya Taishu also says that we are nearing the main bridge to enter the land of claws, Sai said. He says that once on the other side, it would be easy enough to proceed through. I see, he nodded. Anything else? The bridge is the easiest place to stage an ambush, Sai commented. Jiraiya Taishu says to be careful in the rear guard. Do you find this piece strange too? Sai asked abruptly. Naruto nodded. He had felt the same way. There's something amiss. I'll go back to Jiraiya Taishu now. Anything I must relay? Naruto shook his head. No, I'm fine and I can move my arm now, the raven-haired boy smirked. It's not the QB regeneration, but I can work with it. Sai ran back ahead, leaving Naruto behind. The young Chunin exhaled as his eyes looked to the sky. It was such a beautiful day. The column of refugees reached the stone bridge they had to traverse with the sun still high in the sky, making an attack from the monsters something highly improbable. It was as Jiraiya decided to take the rear of the column, letting Naruto in the middle together with Sai that the attack, of course, happened. There was a buzzing sound. The buzzing noise soon grew, as if a swarm of insects was nearing. Hanzaki took that moment to curse loudly. They grew wings. Naruto's eyes widened briefly. He had asked them that question the first time they had met. He hadn't given it much thought, but maybe there was something about them growing wings that made them worse. Giant hulking brutes had been easy to dodge. These looked like completely different beasts as they soared in the sky with green wings of insect-like appearance. If not for the fact they were made of bones and a membrane similar to flesh, they would have looked like locusts. The ugly locusts' inbred cousins. They soared through the air and screeched as they descended upon the refugees. Keep your calm! Jiraiya screamed from his position. Keep them away from the civilians! One of the monsters skittered to a hovering halt in front of Naruto, its wicked hands now curved sides made of bone, as a tail swished behind it. The eyes, however, those were human and maddened by pain and grief. Naruto rolled on the ground, taking with him the child closest to him as the beast attacked, slicing through the other kids who had been frightened to a halt near him and leaving behind only matted blood and torn-apart corpses that screamed their last breath in pain. Naruto didn't give more than a glance to the corpse of the nagging child of earlier, his mind blocking the thoughts of grief out because he still had a very much alive child in need of rescue between his arms. Blood had splattered over Naruto's clothes, as he dodged the attack of another of those insect-like beasts to reach for the other side of the bridge, where Yugao-sensei was protecting the civilians that had traversed safely the bridge. He looked at Sai, who had followed and guarded his back up till then as he handed the child over to his grateful mother. Sai, give me some fire! The pale-skinned boy spewed flames upon the insects nearing on them, just as Naruto's own blades of wind soared in the air to enhance the deadly technique. The insects hit by the blast screeched, as the smell of charred flesh reached Naruto's nose, making him frown, but not overtly so. He ended up recalling the first time he saw death, as he brought himself back to the center of the bridge where more civilians needed to be rescued. He watched the insects scream and burn alive, while regenerating and still not dying, and he powerlessly gazed at the civilians he couldn't help as they were pierced by the side limbs or devoured by the creatures alive. He hoped Jiraiya-sama would be able to hold off the air brutes from the back long enough for the refugee to pass through. The thought distracted him slightly from the scythe of one of the burning monsters swiping towards his head, forcing him to jump backwards in order to avoid the monster's limb. That brought him in midair nearly to fall off the bridge, having misjudged the distance of the jump. Sai's technique, however, conjured a whip, which surrounded Naruto's waist and brought him back to the safety of solid land. Sakura joined them like a pink blur a moment later, as she passed by a blazing ball of fire that was a screaming Otogekyo shinobi, a kunai in her hand and steel wire bundled and held with the other free hand. She pulled the wire a moment later, letting it tighten and clasp around the insect-like wings of one of the monsters. That stopped the creature from flying, as it plummeted to its death. Yugao-sensei sent me to assist, Sakura chirped happily. She was glad to be with her teammates once more, and it showed, in the way she chippered about in the midst of the corpses and the monsters. Yuck! They're nasty, these ones, she babbled as she skidded to a halt near Naruto. Nay, Naruto-kun? If I'm a good girl, you'll forgive me, right? Sakura, not now. Naruto barked back as his kunai came up to parry a side limb. That was a mistake. The monsters seemed lithe and frail compared to their ground counterparts, but in truth, they weren't. The bone protrusions cut through the steel of the normal kunai as if it was made of butter, neatly cutting in half Naruto's body. Thankfully, a Kawarimi no Jutsu brought Naruto to swap with a nearby corpse, but it still was not something pleasant to watch as the corpse of a civilian woman broke in half because of the scythes. Sakura slapped a kunai against the right side of the monster, one riddled with explosive tags. She jumped back just as the monster's tail came in an arc to try and behead her, only managing to nick her stomach slightly. The tags primed and flashed, before detonating and leaving behind a mangled monster corpse, whose right side had been completely smashed because of the explosion. The fact there was just a tiny amount of flesh and bones keeping the monster's two halves connected, however, it didn't even seem to faze the thing, who simply soldiered on towards Sai while regenerating furiously. The pale-skinned boy held his paintbrush in front of him, drawing on a thicker and stronger parchment than before. Sai! Move! Sakura's scream did not faze him, as he kept on drawing. Damn it, Sai! Naruto barked as he jumped in, tackling the beast and sending a fist to slam and hook against one of its wings. The acidic feeling of the monster's skin made Naruto hiss in pain as he twisted the wing out of the socket to exhale the wind blade technique right on the thing's back. Holes appeared on the monster's chest, but they closed within seconds once more. Why? What the hell are you? Naruto screamed as the tail twisted around his waist, before slamming him on the stone floor of the bridge. Around him, Hanzaki was wielding his giant sword with both hands, slicing apart the monsters as his allies burned them with what they could. Guren too occupied them by turning them into crystal statues before other shinobi crumbled them, and Yugao-sensei had adopted a tactic of mixing steel wires and swordsmanship skills to sever them in tiny parts while holding the side of the bridge that was safe. Jiraiya of the Sannin had called forth what looked like a giant frog with two giant katana, and together with it was roasting the beasts in the air, or outright having the frog's tongue jump and stick the insects one at a time. The fact that the frog croaked with pleasure after each fly, that was just an extra. Yet that didn't matter, because there still were more coming, and a monster was trying to charge at Sai. Sakura's own fire technique diverted the monster's attention from smashing into the dark-haired teen that was still in the process of drawing. Whatever he was drawing had to be either complicated, or terribly difficult to finish. The monster was on fire as it slammed its scythe-like limbs on the ground, breaking away chunks of stone before charging with its insect-like wings once more. Horns of bones erupted from the monster's head, ending in sharp antler-like forms. 6 side limbs emerged from the monster's sides as it closed in with unparalleled speed on Sakura, the wicked blades ready to rend her apart. The pink-haired Chunin had the time to widen her eyes, before the blades came viciously down on her body. They pierced through her sides as the monster's mouth opened to reveal curved fangs before the beast tore through her neck vein and bit down hard on her lithe neck muscles, moving its own neck backwards as blood erupted from the wound. The beast screeched as all of its muscles tensed and trembled, and finally detonated in a shower of blood and fleshy pieces. Sakura fell on the ground bleeding copiously, her entire frame racked by trembling spasms. Her breathing grew erratic as she convulsed, but just as another one of those beasts moved closer to them, Sai finished his technique. Naruto watched in horror Sakura falling on the ground, before closing the distance with whatever speed he could muster from his body. What was Jiraiya doing, letting so many pass through? Couldn't he just do something about them? He had toads, for the love of Kami. The second monster's sides tried to come down on Sakura's convulsing body, but an ink oni with a giant ink club smashed into the beast, sending it flying away from her just as Naruto reached the fallen girl and grabbed his Yoroi Tanto. Sorry I'm late, Sai said before giving a wary glance to Sakura. Call help, he added then, falling down on one knee near Sakura. The technique is too taxing for me to maintain for much, dickless. Naruto's breathing grew slightly calmer. Sakura was convulsing, but she was still alive. Sai was taking care of her immediate health needs. They needed help. The QB refused to answer him, and as he bit down on his lips, he could feel the coppery taste of his blood mix with the earthy flavor of the ground. He wondered where the sand was now. He could really use having two giant sand hands to help him in that moment. The front of the bridge was nearly devoid of refugees. Those who hadn't saved themselves by moving past the bridge and further down the road in the land of claws were those paralyzed in fear who couldn't move and were down on the ground shivering and crying. The Odo shinobi were all battling for their lives, but already their breath was coming short. Naruto watched one of the shinobi from sound, a man wielding scissor pincers, overextending his reach and ending up sliced and then feasted upon by 3 of those lab experiments. A shrill echoed in the air as Naruto decided to begin moving towards Yugao-sensei. She had healed him. There was no reason she couldn't heal Sakura too, and that froze Naruto in his bones. A giant-looking mayfly of a deep cerulean color flew down from the head of the swarm of the monsters, her bushy antennas moving frantically around, as her mouth seemed half torn apart. One side looked monstrous, with buck teeth and giant black mosquito-like eyes. The other side was that of a frail-looking girl with teal hair. Her breasts hid behind thick cerulean straps, while her lower body resembled that of a giant bee, only made of flesh and bones, rather than chitin. She was flying on insect-like wings of teal color, wide but at the same time fuzzy and fleshy. The moment the shrill was done, the meek voice of the otherwise horrendous monster resonated clearly in the air with the same tone of a young girl, a young emotionless girl, and it spoke the name of a technique, rather than words. Katon, Kusumi and Byo no Jutsu. Thick gas erupted from the monster queen's mouth, as a dense fog suddenly darted forward to cover the bridge. Don't use fire techniques. Guren's voice roared. The gases explode. Unfortunately, Jiraiya's toad had already drenched in oil a large part of the monsters the Sannin had been battling, and the smoldering remains of a few still flared lightly. All it took was a spark. Naruto had barely the time to spin around, calling forth as much wind chakra he could create in such a short time, before exhaling it in the direction his teammates had been in the thick fog, and a second later, the bridge exploded. The fire went where there was the most oxygen, tearing apart monsters and shinobi alike on its path towards Naruto's mouth and face. The Jinchuriki had barely the time to see the stone bridge splinter and break that the return fire slammed into his face and chest and sent him flying downwards, beyond the safety of the stone rail. He saw a blur that he defined as Sai jump from the bridge to try to grasp at him, opening a scroll on his back to call forth an ink eagle. He looked at the blur getting closer and closer, and finally nearing him. His right arm went up, the one holding his Yoroi Tanto. Sai's hand grabbed his wrist, but the ground was nearing too fast. Naruto shook his head. Sai didn't care. He pulled Naruto up on his ink eagle, before slowly starting to slow down the fall with what chakra he could muster to make the creature flap its wings of ink. Sakura stood still through an ink rope, to avoid her falling down. The ground neared. With a powerful scream from Sai, who normally would have never done so, the bird screeched too and finally defeated the momentum of gravity itself, starting to gain altitude once more. Sai exhaled in relief as sweat poured down his face. He had done it. He had saved his teammates. This feeling, was this what emotions meant? He chuckled slightly as he turned to look at Naruto's status, and there he felt the second emotion of his life. His heart plummeted as he watched Naruto smile at him awkwardly, burnt face and all, and then jumped Tanto in hand to stop the bull rushing of the giant flying monster who was pursuing them. Sai screamed as he watched the creature slam into Naruto's body, flying towards the deep end of the chasm they were leaving on the ink eagle. If he changed the direction of the ink bird, it would all be for naught, and Sakura needed medical attention badly. He had to bring Sakura to safety, and hope that Naruto would be tough enough to survive. He was already starting to hate, feeling these emotions. Kuratsuchi couldn't believe the galls of her grandfather. Not only was she out on a mission, but she was out as a recently minted chunin with the most horrible group ever. Akatsuchi and Jibachi, she had come to tolerate. Suzumabachi and Kurobachi, she felt the need to retch. Her father was leading the 6 chunin back from the land of fangs, where they had gone to secure some supplies of minerals that Tsuchikage had a personal interest for. She didn't know whether it felt degrading to have gone shopping for her grandfather, the fact he had the gall to call this a B-rank mission, or the fact that it was a team of 5 chunin and a jounin who had set out to strike the deal. Her eyes fixed themselves on the road they were traveling a moment later, as she hoped this blessed silence could last. In just a second, she found herself cursing loudly as she snatched from midair a bee and proceeded to crush it. Suzumabaka! Keep your bees on yourself. It's Suzumabachi, and I don't know what you're talking about, Princess. The other kunoichi deadpanned. Silence behind. Kitsuchi barked. We're nearing. Then an explosion made them stop and lose all semblance of bantering. Kitsuchi's eyes narrowed on the road ahead, before giving a single hand sign to the rest of his team. Iwagakure shinobi all learned as genin the most important technique of their village, the Iwagakure technique. Of course, they also learned that trying to teach it to someone else was a crime punishable by death, and that if they even thought about doing so they would have a meeting with the torture and interrogation department of IWA. They all did before they finished their academy anyway, but some went there sooner rather than later. Merging in the ground, Kitsuchi began to move his body forward, leaving behind a trail of pebbles easy to find and follow by any Iwagakure shinobi worth the rank of chunin, and set to move his head above the ground the bare minimum to see what the trouble was about every now and then. Two things he saw first: the missing bridge and the shinobi on one side of it. They sported a vast amount of Otogekure headbands, but there was a glint of... He swallowed nervously. Jiraiya of the Sannin was an enemy with a run-on-sight order. S-rank shinobi always were. Nothing less than an army could generally bring them down, and they always had either a technique that made them true monsters, or something that made them quite a cut above the others. Jinchuriki were automatically S-ranks, for example. The thing he realized next was that there was a stench in the air of burned corpses and rotten flesh, mixed with quite a bit of people, civilians, judging by their lack of weapons, crying at the border of the chasm. He slowly emerged from the ground and brought both his hands up in a sign of peace, which probably saved his life, since the eyes of the Sannin zeroed on him from the moment he had stopped moving nearby. It was as the rest of his team emerged that he began to walk forward. Has the war with Oto already ended, Jiraiya-san? No, Jiraiya shot back. These here are refugees from Orochimaru's madness. What happened to the bridge? Kuratsuchi exclaimed then, pointing at the crumbled form. Why did you blow it up? We didn't, Jiraiya rebuffed Kitsuchi's daughter, making the IWA Jounin mentally curse. That was no moment to antagonize a Sannin. They had no means to escape an encounter, and if they died, the blame would shift to the land of claws in an instant. We'll find another way through then, Kitsuchi remarked as he made to turn his head to nudge his team into leaving. Not so fast, Jiraiya said, with a smile on his face. I know you Iwagakure shinobi can pretty much work with Earth easily, right? Yes, Kitsuchi gritted his teeth. What help might you need, father? There Kuratsuchi went again. Why are you actually willing to help them? Kuratsuchi, Kitsuchi hissed. Be quiet, Kuratsuchi recoiled slightly, before huffing and crossing her arms over her chest. Suzumabachi just smirked at that display, before letting her bees slowly start flying behind her, just in case things went sour quick. Could you build a temporary bridge? The Sannin answered to Kitsuchi. It doesn't have to last much, we just need to link with the other side of the chasm. There are some refugees who remain there and many aren't able to jump by. We will, Kitsuchi nodded, before turning to look at his squad. You heard Jiraiya-san. Start working. He then moved closer to the Sannin, having seen the subtle gesture. He didn't glance back at Suzumabachi, even though he did squish the bee that had tried to hook to his vest. The Kamizuru clan needed to learn to stop trying to one-up others. Jiraiya-san? He asked in a low voice as he followed the Toad Sage away from the refugees. What can I help you with? We have lost some chunin during the battle, Jiraiya spoke slowly, grimacing as he did. They were in the middle of the bridge when it exploded, and because of that we are in need of someone to look at the bottom of the chasm for it. The Sannin's eyes shifted dangerously towards his own daughter. We can consider it an exchange, can we? Kitsuchi exhaled slowly, before nodding imperceptibly. That made the Sannin smile brightly as the white-haired shinobi gave him a wide pat on the back. That's my good old friend. I knew you'd help us, the Jounin of Iwagakure grumbled, but said nothing else. He moved to the border of the chasm and looked down. There were at least a few hundreds of meters before the river down below. The man was really expecting them to have survived if they had fallen. He was just about to jump down, when a black ink eagle emerged from beneath, depositing a tired-looking Sai and a foaming from the mouth Sakura in his arms. Sai had a dark bruise over his right eye, but he still managed to drop his teammate into Yugao's arms before falling on the ground face first, completely spent. The ink eagle slowly melted back down to an inky puddle, and remained there immobile like its creator. We're short one, Jiraiya's voice was stern. Kitsuchi naturally tensed. Of course, the man had made it seem like an everyday mission with no other reason for asking his help, but that Setsukage had told his shinobi of who the new Jinchuriki was, as well as whom his teammates were. They had all memorized their faces. It is never a smart idea to harm someone a veritable weapon of mass destruction considers a friend. Villages had toppled for far less. So with two of the Konoha's Jinchuriki there, the third one that was missing could only be Jiraiya-sama. I need your help here now. The purple-haired woman spoke crisply to the Sannin, her hands covered in blood as she held down the foaming pink-haired girl. What is this? The Sannin's eyes narrowed on Kitsuchi for a brief moment, before he spoke firmly. Go and get the boy and bring him back alive. Understood? Yes, Jiraiya-san. Kitsuchi nodded awkwardly before doing just that. As the Iwagakure Jounin jumped down, Jiraiya moved quickly to Sakura's side. Her neck was no longer bleeding, but pulsing tumorous masses began to spread from the wound, slowly rotting away the flesh as her skin blistered and reddened. A seal similar to that of the cursed mark of heaven formed, before pulsing corroded nature chakra into the girl's body, molding her body together with it. Jiraiya cursed as he began to work. He couldn't worry about his godson now. He had to worry about getting the girl to live. The seal worked fast, but he wasn't renowned as the Fuinjutsu expert of Konoha for no reason. He was good at what he did. The first 5 containment seals he drew the cursed heaven seal tore apart with ease. He just managed to get time enough to devise a few more, until they all finally settled in one after the other. What Mitarashi Anko had settled for was nothing compared to what the girl had to feel on her skin. He had done his work abruptly, quickly and without actually pondering, but as it was, the tumorous mass was receding back where it came from, on the neck. She has to be killed before she transforms. Hanzaki took that moment to speak, as the Otogekyu shinobi walked closer to where he was working. No amount of sealing is going to work. You knew about this? Jiraiya hissed. Maybe you should give me this information now, rather than wait until you have been successfully escorted to your new home, the Toad Sage growled. Hanzaki recoiled, bringing his face downwards to the side in shame, before replying. That's how they reproduce. Orochimaru used some of the clan as lab rats. They were the first, the thing you saw? I recognized her, she was such a sweet child, and now… What? Did they do to my student? Yugao's hands firmly grasped Hanzaki's clothes by the neck. What? It's the cursed seal of heaven, Jiraiya said then abruptly as he watched the seal flaring one last time before settling in, taking on the appearance of a strange shuriken-like form that somehow eerily reminded him of Itachi's Manjikyu Sharingan. A variation of it at least. The creatures undergo stages of evolution, Hanzaki murmured. Depending on how much they feed or how much they are wounded, they absorb nature chakra to heal their wounds, Jiraiya mumbled. That makes sense. They must work with a lot of cellular division and regeneration, but their lives, they're short. Like butterflies, Hanzaki grimaced. They can stay months in their earth form, but once that form is done they move on to the heaven one. That doesn't last more than a day or two. And what of the big one? That was Kajiro. Hanzaki closed his eyes, his tone riddled with grief. I asked her to go to Orochimaru with Erasure. I thought the Sannin would help bring the Fuma clan back to its glory and he did, but this wasn't worth it. Yugao pushed the man away from her with scorn visible on her face, before turning to walk towards Sakura's prone form. The Otogekyu's leader right hand went to cover his face. I still don't know how I am worthy of leading the survivors. I started this. If only I hadn't sent them to Orochimaru then this wouldn't have happened. Wait, Jiraiya muttered. Erasure? Isn't that your Otokage? No, Hanzaki shook his head. Orochimaru was our Kage. He sent Erasure in his stead. I see. Jiraiya grimly looked to Sai, whom Yugao had begun to treat for his own wounds. Let's hope nothing else happens. The Toad Sage whispered that, looking towards the Iwagakure shinobi, who were now finishing giving the last touches to the stone bridge. It wasn't as sturdy as the one before, but it would hold to let the refugee on the other side through. How did they know where to attack us though? Jiraiya remarked after a few seconds of silence. They didn't look that intelligent. They sensed chakra movement, Hanzaki murmured. Like Guren's crystals can be used to sense vibrations of electronics. You knew all this, Jiraiya hissed. Why didn't you tell us? We could have protected you better. Because how could I? Hanzaki's voice was wary as he finally confessed. Those things, that knowledge, it could be used to recapture our land, and if Konoha knew. So you thought it would be best to sacrifice a few of your refugees to the risk rather than just tell us? Jiraiya spat out in cold anger. You know what, Hanzaki? You're right on one thing. You truly aren't fit to rule your men. With those words said, Jiraiya moved away from the Odo shinobi. Still, one thing puzzled the Toad Sage. He didn't recall using any chakra-intensive techniques, so how did they find them? Karen Uzumaki smiled to herself. Orochimaru-sama's plan had been perfect. He truly was the most wonderful tactician to be born. This was perfect. The mindless beasts did nothing to her, because she could flawlessly hide her chakra from their senses, and the leaders of the hive obeyed her, because they bowed to Orochimaru-sama's will. By concentrating, she could send small bursts of chakra through the areas she sensed with her sensor ability, and with that she guided the mindless monsters against the refugee column of traitors who refused to serve Orochimaru-sama. When they had been close to escape, she had sent Kajiro. She hadn't felt Naruto's chakra anywhere, only a strange form of chakra that didn't belong, and yet then, it had happened suddenly on the bridge, and Naruto's chakra had appeared like some sort of flare. She had watched with her mind's eye the boy exhale a gust of wind to swipe away the flammable gas of Kajiro near his teammates, only to end in the explosion when the fire encountered his air chakra. Kajiro had taken an interest in Naruto's chakra. Her mind was more and more like that of an insect rather than that of a human by now, and she hadn't even needed coaxing her in order to bring her back. Now she was there, standing at the entrance to the hive deeply rooted within the rocky coast of Otogekyo with the sea. Her eyes strained for a moment as she caught the buzzing and the swarm's arrival, before watching with a small smile as Naruto's frame came into view. Well, he looked like Naruto, but his body was badly charred. He had taken most of the damage intended for his teammates, always the noble hero. Still, this was nothing she couldn't heal. With Kajiro around, the mindless beasts just walked around lost like stupid cows, not even caring about what happened around them. She watched as Kajiro's delicate hands, the first two she had were human still, but the others all resembled the scythe-like appendages the heaven-side beasts had, gently lowered Naruto on the main chamber's rocky surface in a bed of seaweed. Karen battled internally between watching and intervening then. These reactions they were strange. They didn't make sense since Kajiro was supposed to just act on her orders or Orochimaru's, and she hadn't told the monster to drop Naruto on a seaweed bed. There was some sort of mothering nature to those actions that Karen couldn't place. It didn't make sense. Kajiro had never met Naruto before. Kajiro had never even gone to Konoha before. There was nothing in the Fuma clan that had anything to do with the Uzumaki clan. That mothering nature wasn't showed even when she gave orders. Most of the time, Kajiro just clicked and hissed in annoyance at her or at the mindless brutes without pause. Karen hesitated for an instant, before deciding to intervene just when Kajiro's hands had begun to ruffle the boy's hair. That too made no sense. Why was the insect petting him? Kajiro! Leave now! She barked at the giant creature with impunity. The thing had never defied her before, and so it was a shocked Karen who found herself dropping the ground to avoid an overhead swipe of the beast's scythes as a snarling and furious hissing noise came close to her face. Mine! Kajiro's voice was something similar to pure unbridled fury as she spoke. Mine! Karen swallowed nervously. All right, but Kajiro-chan, you want him healed, right? Mine! Yes, but you want him healed, no? Kajiro looked at her for a moment, before looking back at Naruto. Finally, she nodded. Heal, Karen sighed in relief. She moved closer to Naruto's prone form, and then moved her arm closer to his mouth, widening it enough to let her arm in before forcing him to close the teeth around her flesh. The moment blood spilled, she closed her eyes and exhaled slowly. It was always such a pleasurable rush feeling herself bitten. It reminded her of her time in slavery. Of the good times people beat her up, used her up, and then bit her wherever they wanted because, back then, she was just a thing, and things are used, not loved. Then Orochimaru-sama had come and had saved her from the brigands that had burned her village and kept her as a plaything. She had become Orochimaru-sama's toy then. But at least she got clothes out of the deal. Pain was pleasure after all. It was the only reason she hadn't gone mad. People who made her suffer loved her, and people who tried to keep her happy and loved usually died anyway, killed by other people. Life was misery and pain, and the sooner one found pleasure in it, the better. So she moaned as her blood began to work on Naruto's body, closing the wounds and healing the boy's scars. Soon, his breathing grew tranquil as he began to sleep peacefully, and as Karen stood up to leave, Kajiro had already left. She frowned. She had thought Naruto had been the problem. She supposed that maybe Kajiro had simply fell in some sort of insect-like desire to breed with a male, but she had left as if Naruto didn't matter to her at all anymore. That was strange. It actually made her curious. Maybe, once Naruto woke up, she could experiment. A small smile settled on Karen's face as she began to think. Would the instruments she had here be enough? She knew she had some scalpels and some forceps. But then again she would need some drugs to test his reactions and a few more objects to do blood tests and get thorough results. She couldn't exclude having to wound or burn him again, just to recreate the effects of what had happened. She was sure Naruto would love it. Pain was pleasure, after all. Koharu Yuditane and Hamura Midokado sat on the council's chairs, the one between them empty, if not for the Hokage's hat placed firmly atop of it. They both were grimly watching the jounin in front of them, past their desk, and the looks they had, not even Guy felt boisterous, and Kakashi was on time. Hiruzen Sarutobi served Konohagakure no Sato for decades, Koharu began firmly. Since he became Hokage, no one contested his decisions, for they were made with hindsight and careful planning. It is thus with a heavy heart, Hamura continued, that we make public the last will of the Sandaime as per his indications, will that was updated just after the Chunin exams that took place in Konoha just last month. Koharu coughed as she grabbed the closed letter, opening it up and then beginning to read it. If you are reading this, the old woman talked hesitantly, then I have died before publicly naming a successor. Thus far, many things have come to my attention, many that as Hokage, I cannot reveal to those who do not share my title. I ask for this will to be made public, for it to be told around the village at the same time as the jounin are informed, for my successor is someone I am sure will bring many to rebel against my decision. It is a selfish decision. It is a selfish idea. I have no illusions you will understand, or you will accept it, but I have made a choice which the daimyo of the Land of Fire shares. Koharu's voice suddenly died in her throat. The first choice for succession is Danzo Shimura, she spoke firmly. In the event of his death, the second choice for succession, her voice died once more, as she firmly gripped the paper in her hands. She dropped the paper and stood, before leaving in a hurry. Hamura picked the paper up, and slowly paled. Then, with an air of finality that could have shaken the dead, he whispered, Orochimaru. The jounin all stood up screaming at the forgery or at the spy in the village, but Hamura slammed both hands on the desk and yelled, Silence! Are you shinobi or yakuza? The voices died down, as Hamura slowly kept on reading. This is for the jounin alone and no one else. His eyes shone as he kept on talking to the assembled men. Danzo Shimura is the only one I can envision planning against Orochimaru's actions. In the event of his death, then Konohagakure is doomed. Thus I plead of you to think of my words not as a harsh criticism, but as a truth. If you cannot defeat your enemy, then ally with him. It will give you time. Moreover, if he comes to take the place that was mine, eventually, if shown loyalty, he will commit a mistake small enough to chance killing him with treachery. Hamura's voice was but a whisper as it continued. In the event of failure, a suicide mission must reach Ama no Hoko. There were whispers around the room. And there, it must activate the tower with Sezuri. The counselor trembled as he sat down heavily on the chair. He slowly removed his glasses from his face, before putting his fingers to the sides of his nose and pressing down hard as he kept his eyes closed. He felt a headache coming already, and he could do nothing to stop this from happening. Can't we just activate Ama no Hoko, whatever it is? A jounin asked. Why must we give the title of Hokage to a traitor of the leaf? Because Ama no Hoko was activated once before, from what history tells us, Kakashi spoke then firmly. It is a well-kept secret, but did you know that the Land of Wind used to have flourishing vegetation around it? The silver-haired jounin closed his only eye, putting away his copy of Ika Fleshy Fun Tactics. Ama no Hoko absorbs yang energy from the spot it is pointed at and redirects it to its surroundings. The Land of Wind became a desert when it activated in the Old War, in the times before the samurai and chakra. Half of the sand in the Land of Wind is made of the dust of the bones of those who died when the tower hit. A heavy silence descended in the room then, as nobody dared to speak. Kurina Yuhi broke it, with a question filled with dread. And where does the Sandaime want the tower pointed? Hamura grimaced. Wherever Orochimaru and his army are, even if in the heart of Konoha itself. The silence this time lasted only 2 seconds. Afterwards, the jounin's roars and screams actually echoed through the entire Hokage tower, as they kept on rambling about how impossible it was and how the will had to be a forgery. The opposite couldn't be true, because if it was, then what the Sandaime meant was that no one was able to defeat his student, not even the other Sannin themselves. That thought was what fueled their fears, and it was to that climate of fear that Tsunade Senju unknowingly stumbled upon, as he entered Konohagakure after years of being away. She huffed and puffed her bountiful chest outwards. Shizen! Let's go get sensei. Why yes, Tsunade Shursho. Shizen stammered, as she shyly looked around the village she had so dearly missed. She just hoped, as she walked the familiar roads, that something would come to keep her Shursho in the village. Anything, really. She was just so tired of going around. Chapter 39. the dusk begins. Hinata's eyes opened to a bleak grayish morning. The sun hid behind the clouds, and the atmosphere of the village was tense. She could no longer wash herself alone, but as a female branch member helped her, her gaze settled wistfully on the outside garden. Even though she had truly been scared of training with her father, now her complete lack of training made her sad. Her sensei had come by a few times, trying to gently talk to her and ask how she was doing. She was sincerely doing fine, but Yuhi-sensei didn't believe her. Then again, she was no longer sensei to her, she wasn't a kunoichi anymore. Her legs didn't work. They did not obey her. They refused and food tasted bland, the sky was pitiful. The air was stale, and the smell of old and dust was everywhere around her. She didn't feel alive anymore. Her breathing was slow and controlled, but that was because her tears had already dried even on the inside. Ko-san had been her caretaker for so long, and now once more the branch family member carried her with his strong arms to the gardens, where she would spend an awkward day doing nothing more than sipping tea and watching the leaves fall. They always fell, and winter was coming. Naruto-kun's birthday had already passed by, and her mood dropped once more thinking about the demon that inhabited the blonde boy's skin. It was in such a situation that she saw Niji walk by, his forehead protector tightly tied to his forehead. She just felt apathy in his regards. It wasn't his fault. They had targeted her team because of the old diatribe between branch house and main house, but Niji would never have killed her. Humiliated her? Probably, but that was nothing new. He didn't make a snide remark at her as he walked by. Either he hadn't seen her, impossible, or he simply was ignoring her. It actually made her spirit rise a bit. Niji no longer insulting her was an improvement on her past life, but she would go without in a heartbeat, if only she could move her legs again. Her pale eyes settled once more on his back as he left the grounds. He hadn't come to train then, which was better, since she wasn't going to move from her position even if he did decide to train there. She didn't want to have Ko move her again, and frankly, she rather preferred to sit and watch the tree branches move. "Wani-sama?" A tiny voice called her, making her head turn gently to the side where Hanabi stood half surprised and half shocked. "They said you couldn't walk anymore." Her voice was merely a whisper. Hinata nodded slowly. "Yes, I asked Ko-san to move me here." She returned to watching the sky. "He's preparing me tea." "Oh, Wani-sama," Hanabi hesitated. Hinata just smiled gently. Hanabi had never hesitated. So different from her, she strived under the stress of father's exercises. Hinata simply couldn't. His eyes and his frosty tones scared her too much. "Do you need something?" The girl walked closer then, and something in that moment, in the way Hanabi seemed genuinely concerned for her pitiful existence now, something in that moment snapped. Hanabi had loathed her with all her heart when she could walk. Hanabi had brought her on the ground coughing blood too many times to count, calling her weakling, unfit for the clan, not worthy of being her sister, and many more words that had torn apart her heart time and time again, and always she had smiled. Always she had kept quiet and cried herself to sleep, and now she decided to act the little sister, now when she had lost her legs. There was just a simple answer to that, really, it was the only that made sense. Naruto-kun was dead. A demon had replaced him. Hanabi-chan would never act like that. Hanabi-chan was dead. A demon had replaced her. Niji and I would never ignore her when he could spat in her direction. He was dead. A demon had replaced him. Her father never acted gently. He was dead. A demon had replaced him. Demons had the same chakra as living beings. How could she differentiate a demon from a non-demon? There really was no other explanation on why people acted strangely with her now. She was the dirty rag of the Hyuga clan after all, the heiress who was unfit to rule. There was no reason to be kind now, not to her. No, there had to be something wrong. She smiled to the demon that wore Hanabi-chan's skin and shook her head gently. She was trapped and surrounded by demons. If she began to make a fuss, they'd know and kill her too. Maybe they wanted her for some reason. Maybe they wanted to use her for some sort of ritual. Didn't demons do that? Maybe they wanted to have her give birth to demon children. Was that why her father talked of arranging a suitable marriage for her? No, it couldn't be. Tears began to fall down her cheeks as the demon wearing Hanabi's skin took a step back, her face clearly showing worry for her condition. "Wani-sama?" The tiny voice of Hanabi came to her ears through Hanabi's mouth, and it was Hanabi's skin, but beneath it, there had to be a demon. It was the only answer. She couldn't remain calm, not for long. Her sister's skin was the garment of such a foul demon, She could not tolerate it. There had to be a demon beneath her flesh. Hanabi misunderstood. She misunderstood and neared her older sister, her heart beating slightly as she believed she was simply watching her sister breaking down from her words. She was sorry she had done as her father asked, but father was father, what he said had to be. Now her older sister was no longer going to train and would never walk again, and Hanabi's tightly controlled dam over her feelings had burst out after seeing her in such a state. Therefore, Hanabi neared her and hugged her older sister. She hugged her and cried, bawling over her sister's state and begging forgiveness for all the times she had treated her badly. "I'm sorry, Wani-sama, I'm sorry!" Hanabi cried as she held onto her older sister's kimono. "I'm sorry, What are you sorry about?" Hinata's voice changed suddenly, her eyes cold. "Oh, Wani-sama?" She looked at her older sister with surprise and a slight shock. It was only the fact that indeed, Hanabi had trained more than Hinata that made the difference between her dying and her surviving the moment. Because the moment she said Wani-sama, Hinata's right hand had come down with all the speed the elder Hyuga sister could muster against Hanabi's ribcage. "You don't get to be sorry, demon!" Hinata screamed as Hanabi barely managed to block her attack. She could feel her right arm burning from the chakra coils cut from the attack. If the attack had connected with her ribcage and her heart, she would have died. "Give me my sister back, fiend! Monster!" Hanabi jumped back, staring in fright at Hinata crawling on the ground towards her, her nails digging in on the parquet as she kept on screaming against her. "You're not my sister! You're just a demon wearing her skin! You're not Hanabi-chan, but a filthy, lurid hellspawn fiend! You killed my sister, and now you want to kill me! What? No! Wani-sam, don't call me that!" Hinata screamed, as members of the branch family began to arrive with hurry after hearing the loud noises. "You're not my sister!" Hinata bawled over as she cried. "You killed her, demon!" And no, Hanabi shook her head, her eyes stingy and watery. I didn't, Wani-sama, you're... Kill me or get away from me," Hinata spat out darkly. "I can't stand seeing my sister's face on you, demon." And for the first time in years, the Hyuga sister who left crying was not Hinata, but Hanabi. Hinata exhaled loudly as her arms trembled after the effort she had done. She could feel her breathing growing ragged, but she hated herself more than she hated the demons. If she had been stronger, they wouldn't have taken her sister, her father, her cousin, her Naruto-kun away. It was all her fault in the end. But she would fight them tooth and nail. And when the demons would come to eat her, then at least she would die and go to the heaven where fighters went, the heaven where Naruto-kun surely was waiting for her to come. As Hinata closed her eyes to the need for rest, another boy shrouded in darkness touched gently the bark of a tree. Sasuke was not happy with the arrangements for learning how to live blind. He didn't know why he had to leave behind the Uchiha compound, or why he was now apparently a live-in guest of the Inuzuka. What he knew was that the entire compound filled with noises worse than a full-out party every single time a shinobi or kunoichi of the clan came back from a mission. Even when they were simply late, they celebrated twice. The moment they were supposed to arrive and the moment when they finally arrived. He steadied himself and took another step. He was doing well, at least he hoped so. The trick was simple and unnerving at the same time. It was the same principle of walking on trees or surfaces. Stick chakra to the ground and let it slowly pan out. Sure, you will not see again, but the difference in chakra will tell you if you're about to step on solid rock, tree bark, or dung. Because yes, his training consisted on walking through a field disseminated with dog crap. The fact the Inuzuka did that with their noses stuck to the ground actually made him a favorite. But then again, there was no way he'd sniff the dirt, or take a facial of shit. He actually smirked at the image of Hana taking one during the test, even though she claimed she had aced it on the first one of her tries. He had no idea what Hana's appearance was to begin with, but he imagined her like a bulky brute with a club tied to her back and 3 ferocious wolves. Maybe he did imagine her with more scars than not and more feral qualities, but from Tsum Inuzuka he didn't expect a flower lily. He had actually met Kiba's mother. She had asked her team for a D rank in cleaning dog shit and putting it aside for something. Well, now he knew what that something was. He took a slow, steadying breath. He could do this. The next step would be solid if he landed it a few centimeters forward. Just to be sure, he brought chakra to his soul and calmly, his forehead was sweating, began to settle the foot down. The loud yapping of a dog distracted him, making him flinch and stumble. His foot ended up with a squish sound and Sasuke's forehead sported a nervous tick mark. Where is that dog? He snarled, gritting his teeth and clenching his fists. slowly trying to clean his foot against the grass blades. The only result was that he squished another shit, and then one more, and again, and by the time he was at the fourth he just surrendered and walked ahead towards the exit of the training course, ignoring the repeated squish noises or the horrendous sensation between his toes. He knew, thankfully, where the water pipe was, near the kennels. The yapping grew more insistent as he neared the water valve, until in the end he heard the noise of running water. "Stop it!" a rough voice called to the yapping dog. There was silence a moment later, as whoever spoke sensed him. The dog began to cry and whine. "Stupid dog," the man grumbled. "Well, boy. Failed the course? Ah, you're the Uchiha." "Yes," Sasuke gritted out. "What's going on? You can't see?" "Oh right, you can't," the man chuckled to himself. "Well, one of the bitches gave birth few months ago, but out of 6 puppies one's an albino. We can't have that. They're weaker than the others and can't use chakra properly. So I'm trying to drown him. I shouldn't have put it off for so long though, because he's got a nasty bite now." Sasuke remained quiet. "Well, I'll probably wring his neck then." "Wait," Sasuke blurted out. "Can I have him? Listen, brat, why do you care?" Sasuke shrugged. "No reason. This isn't a charity, you know? The corpse is normally used as feed for the other dogs, and the bones are ground to dust to be used too. I'll pay for him," Sasuke snapped. "Oh well, it's a weight out of my shoulders." Sasuke swore he could feel the smugness in the other shinobi's face. The moment the man left, the Uchiha heard the soft pit-patter of the yapping dog moving closer. It was then that something made his ears twitch. Pit-pat, pit-pit-pat. That didn't sound right. It was supposed to be a rhythm of right leg, left leg, left leg. It sounded as if his hands went down to the nose of the puppy, which actually licked the palm of his hand and nuzzled its furry face against it. Sasuke's other hand moved to look at the limbs. 1, 2, 3. The dog wasn't only an albino. He was also a 3-legged runt. Sasuke tensed slightly, but eased a moment later. A dog with only 3 legs was no different from an Uchiha without eyes. Both were incomplete, both were useless, and both were actually unworthy of living, yet they lived all the same. He exhaled and grabbed the dog gently by his midriff. "You know where the water valve is? Woof!" The dog barked excitedly. "Woof! I'll take that as a no," Sasuke sighed. His free hand traveled towards the wall where the water valve was supposed to be. His fingers moved upon the steel tube, then to the pipe and the tap. He let the water flow as he slowly washed his sandals and feet. The moment he was done, he realized the dog had been whining since he had opened the valve. So, the dog was afraid of water now. Plain wonderful. A broken, damaged dog for a broken and damaged Uchiha. His brother might actually die from pity, rather than be killed by him. Wonderful. Itachi Uchiha was watching with uncaring and cold eyes the arrival of Tobi through the slip in time and space. Around him, the tall buildings of Amagakure gave a bleak and gray-tinted atmosphere to the perpetual raining city. He spoke firmly the moment Uchiha Madara stepped through, his voice betraying genuine annoyance. "Orochimaru stole my weakling brother's eyes. How can I achieve the perfect Mangekyo without them?" He wasn't really annoyed, he was angry. He was angry the Hokage had failed in protecting his brother, angry Orochimaru had succeeded, but most of all he was angry his brother hadn't become powerful enough to stand on his own. He was acting rashly, and he knew it, but at the same time, it was time to call in the credit he had earned. Tobi blinked from the only slit available in his mask, before deadpanning. "And that is my problem. How, exactly?" "Because it is." Tobi blinked again. "You will go alone if I don't intervene, Itachi?" "Indeed." The Konoha missing knee nodded once, firmly. "There is." Tobi stepped forward and brought both hands on Itachi's shoulders. "I understand." The Kamui activated the next instant, and Itachi disappeared from sight. Tobi sighed as he looked around. He didn't really want to do it. He could leave Itachi inside the pocket dimension of his eye to die of hunger and thirst, but if he did that then there was no guarantee the boy would not spy on him by smashing his own eyes. He'd have to go to Orochimaru's location now. He hated doing that. He wasn't supposed to reveal his big-shotness to the world. He was supposed to be the imbecile Tobi. Now there really wasn't a choice. He needed Itachi more than he needed Orochimaru, and really, what had possessed the man to steal the Sharingan? It was all going to be for naught. Truly, the moment people carried love, they learned of hate. Soon all that would end. Soon, there would only be peace. He could not wait to leave this fake world behind. A world without Rin. A world without her, after all, was not a world that could truly exist. Dark clouds loomed over the sky. The grass trembled beneath the harsh, soaring winds. A dark hand lowered itself upon the charred earth, followed by another. 10 tails swished on his back, and for the first second, he felt peace. Then evil washed over him: misery, death, greed, revenge, arrogance, disgust, ignorance, violence, malice. He screamed to the sky. The evil would not abide. The darkness would not recede. This tide of unblemished evil would not disperse. Thus he struck, beneath the gaze of the watchful moon, so white and so pure. He roared and tore through mountains and men. He screamed, and the dead answered his call of revenge. He shrieked, and purifying fire burst from the earth crust. He loathed, and they died. He attacked, and they fell. Then his duty, the duty the moon and the earth had demanded him, was stopped. A man, with concentric purplish eyes and blonde hair, stopped it. A man that stood with a monk's staff and a plethora of weapons. Weapons of old, weapons that wounded him and harmed him. He fought them, he fought him, but in the end, he lost. Naruto's eyes widened in surprise as the boy woke up. His gaze fell to his surroundings, as his nose smelled the salty taste of seawater. His throat was parched, and as he coughed, he suddenly felt the watchful gaze of something on him. He barely turned his gaze to the side that he recoiled, his back hitting the wall of the cave. There was a moment of silence as he stared. The creature that looked back at him had dark eyes, and looked similar to the giant insect that had attacked them on the bridge, and yet completely different at the same time. His upper side was that of a normal and fragile-looking male, while his lower one, yes, his lower one did look like a sort of giant maggot. I am Erasure, the boy spoke slowly. Who are you? Naruto swallowed nervously. His right hand went to his face, trying to feel the charred skin but finding none. His left hand moved to his weapon pouch, which wasn't there. You have been disarmed, Erasure spoke quietly. You need not fear me. I have not. His face showed pain for a moment, as he held his stomach tightly. I am not an enemy. There was a moment of silence as Arashi's breathing grew labored, before whatever pain he felt finally receded. I am a victim, he whispered. And I, well, why are you here? Naruto licked his lips slightly, his eyes looking around. He was in a wide hall, surrounded by the monstrous hulks that, however, were lazily hanging around. Every now and then, they made a step in one direction, before taking another in the opposite. I don't know where here is to begin with, Naruto croaked out, warily searching for a weapon of sorts. He could try to break a chunk of stone with his bare hands. Or maybe his head. The forehead protector was made of steel after all. We are in one of Orochimaru's bases, Erasure replied firmly, his maggot inferior side slowly crawling backwards as the back pushed one of the mindless brutes out of the area. I believe, he added as a sickening feeling now settled into Naruto's stomach, that you are here as food. Erasure slowly walked forward now, pushing with his lower body the creatures out of the way. The question is, are you mine or Kajiro's? I'm not food, Naruto squeaked as he slowly stood. He didn't have a kunai, but as long as he had his chakra he could. Arashi's maggot body erupted with thick silky strands and humanoid twisted pincer-like limbs as they slammed Naruto against the cavern's wall, making the boy wince and scream in pain. The moment blood spilled, Erasure stopped. He stopped and slowly inclined his head to the side, taking hesitant sniffs. That was when Naruto was dropped unceremoniously on the ground, only to land on a soft panel of sand that had appeared from the various sediments in the cave, as if attracted by his blood. Mine, Erasure whispered in a half-dreamy state, before shaking his head strongly. No, what is mine? The voice hissed again. That is mine. It snarled ferociously now. Mine. Mine, it laughed. It is mine. Why are you not mine? It whispered then. We are. No, no. Erasure shook his head, taking steps backwards. Stay out of my head. The man screamed. Out. Out. Naruto frowned, slowly standing up. He held his bleeding wound with his right hand, watching as the blood that seeped out from his tattered clothes stuck to the stand, which soon began to levitate near him. Stop doing this to us! Erasure screeched, before his entire body went limp. Naruto stilled in shock. Just what was going on, Naruto? Erasure spoke then firmly. Naruto? Can you hear me? The voice was distorted. I dare not take control of this body, lest I end up trapped inside. It spoke once more. I am Mito, can you hear me? Naruto blinked. Wait. You're real? No time, Mito remarked. Oh, it's complicated. I'm traveling through the nature chakra naturally acquired by these monsters to influence their behavioral patterns. There is quite a bit of fuinjutsu involved with their seals, but it's all based on Uzumaki designs I can easily work on. This is creepy, Naruto whispered, looking at the limp corpse of Erasure. I'm abusing Kurama's powers, Mito commented. His corruptive chakra can easily overload these things, but I'm wary of giving him too much leeway. So wait, you're telling me I can control them? No, Mito snapped at him. And you should try and escape now. How does that work anyway? Naruto muttered as he slowly limped away. And why am I still bleeding? Why do you think blood is needed to summon creatures? It naturally connects the chakra to the nature chakra of the world, which makes for an easier transition of summons from one side to the other. Mito's speaking was a bizarre and horrific accident, but the things she said, they simply didn't make much sense to Naruto to begin with. I think I understand it slightly. Chakra makes you and blood connects you. Actually, the correct way to put it would be that the extra bit of sealing on your seal was meant to alter some of your chakra to be digestible by mine, so that I could theoretically impart on you the knowledge of how to work with the Kyuubi's chakra before disappearing. That is unfortunately no longer an option, as I was forced to rend the seal in order to permanently withhold both Shikaku and Kurama into a state of perpetual imprisonment. Can you please stop talking? Naruto pleaded. Your voice hurts. Erasure blinked. Sorry. You must be feeling an echo. The buzzing grew stronger as Naruto increased his pace, Erasure in tow. The man-creature suddenly stopped after a few more meters, convulsing as it began to foam from its mouth. Losing control, Naruto's sides hurt. His legs hurt, his entire frame hurt, but he still ran. He ran past corridors and creatures that tried to behead him with their bone clubs. He dashed across empty rooms and finally, in the end, he heard the sound of waves infringing against a hard surface. He saw the light of the day emerge from the end of the stone hallway, and just as he was about to jump through, 5 Saban needles pierced through his back, suddenly tensing all of his muscles and making him fall with a dull thud on the ground, mere inches away from the outside. Naruto-kun! A very familiar voice exclaimed then. You're awake, Karen? He could do nothing as he felt the female hands of the red-haired girl turn him around. She sported a bright smile as her crimson eyes stared into his. Naruto! How are you, my cousin, Karen? He croaked as he felt her hands roam over his tattered clothes. What? Why? Orochimaru-sama told me, the girl giggled. That he knew the Sandaime would send Jiraiya to look into Oto for the sound ninja supplies and experiments. That's why he had me free them. Also, did you know he knew you would be there too? Together with your team? Orochimaru-sama knows many things, Naruto-kun, you'd do best remember it. She snuggled her face against his chest for a moment, before frowning and ripping apart his shirt as what remained of his chunin vest hung from his shoulders. That's better. Do you know that the heart twitches? It goes thump-thump, but sometimes it also goes be-thump. Why can't I move? Senbon coated in paralyzing poison. I hit the nerves related to your main muscle clusters, but not the mouth, she smiled. I need to hear you scream after all. Naruto closed his eyes as he slowly felt a thrumming sensation on the back of his head. What did you say? I need to hear you scream. Karen nodded firmly. And I have to test out why Kajiro acted strangely with you. I already ruled out her heat period. She isn't laying eggs since her hybrid ovaries are reaching the gangrenous stage. Lucky her, she must be suffering a lot. It was the wistful tone of Karen's words that made Naruto's eyes widen. Was the Karen I met a lie? Naruto choked out. You can't become mad overnight, he murmured. You can't. Karen said nothing, but she did scoff before grabbing a sharp Senbon needle. Did you know, Naruto-kun? There are certain nerves which can be hit to bring forth pain and pleasure? She smiled as she used her free hand to scratch his chin. A tiny prickle, and like magic you start screaming your lungs out. She slowly rolled on her back, dropping her red-haired head just below his chin as she comfortably brought her knees upwards to her chest before stretching on him. You're really comfy, she smiled. Your skin, that is. So, you think I can start by flailing you alive, after we're done with the experiments? No, Naruto croaked. Please, my team. They're fine, Karen huffed, rolling her eyes. They reached the land of demons safely. Orochimaru-sama just wanted you to waste time. Why? Because as long as Jiraiya was busy elsewhere, the only man who could battle on par with him, then he could freely act elsewhere. Naruto swallowed nervously. Doing what? Oh. Karen clapped her hands together. That's easy. She spun around, straddling Naruto's waist and smiling coyly. I nearly forgot. Her hands grabbed at the boy's shoulders. Orochimaru-sama wants some Uzumaki samples from a healthy male. So we're going to have some pleasure, you and I. She giggled, gently scratching his cheek. Think of it as repopulating the clan. And then her other hand came down. Naruto screamed as the Senbon coated in poison pierced through his neck, before letting his chakra flare and crack apart the ground beneath his body. Karen held on to him with a gleeful look filled with a mad glint, as her nails dug in deeply on the boy's shoulders. "I'll be gentle, Naruto," she sultrily moaned. "Really gentle, like they did with me, you know? I came to love it. You'll love it too." And it was then that she smiled and clenched her hands tightly against his shoulders. "Yes. I will make you suffer, and you will love it. Orochimaru-sama won't be here for months on, and then when he arrives, his muscles burned from the effort, but his entire frame just felt like lead. He couldn't survive this. He needed help. Any type of help would work." She hadn't blocked his mouth, but without hand signs the air technique was out of question. As she slowly rocked back and forth atop him, and as pain numbed his brain cells. "Yes, Naruto, yes, Naruto." Uzumaki, his tongue twirled in his mouth as chakra began to condense. Pain forced him to close his eyes shut, and he felt his body starting to betray him. "Come on, Naruto, say you love this. Pain is pleasure. Say you love this. Say you love me." The chakra began to spiral. He could make it work like a Baijidama. He had to remember that feeling. It had to be natural. It had to. His throat engorged for a moment, and to Karen's widening eyes, he expelled a perfectly concentric sphere of chakra that slammed into the girl's chest and tore through her clothes, sending her to scream in a high pitch as she fell backwards on the ground, blood oozing down from her wounds. Naruto took that moment to breathe in peace, before he heard the buzzing sound grow closer. He snapped his eyes shut and tensed his body, gritting his teeth furiously as he tried to inch further away. When that failed, he had no other choice but to push the senbons deeper into his skin. He convulsed from the effort, and then brought the momentum strongly against his back. His breathing stilled for a moment as he felt the senbon pierce completely through his skin and dig deeply into his flesh. When he breathed again, he could crawl. Whatever was as the exit was better than staying there to be devoured or worse, raped by a mad girl. There were tears in the corner of his eyes as he used his head to push himself forth. Was Karen like that since the beginning? Had he trusted her with his teammates only because of a surname? Was there really but a mask on her face when they had first met? Worse still, Orochimaru knew this. He didn't know why the sensei of his mother had such a keen interest on destroying Konoha, or how he knew when things were going to happen as if he could read the future. What he did know was that he had to leave, even if it meant falling down the cliff and in the sea below. He stopped to breathe as his head pushed him slightly over the edge of the exit. Waves crashed against the rocks down below, something that a shinobi with the knowledge to walk on walls could easily avoid, but that in his condition, he could not. If only there was a way to wait. He closed his eyes and bit down on his tongue hard, as blood pooled on his mouth. The moment he spat it out, the sand naturally brought by the wind converged upon it, beginning to float nearby. He locked eyes with it. Grind. The bloody sand began slowly to circle around the ground of the cave. Grind faster. He gritted his teeth as he spat out more blood, pouring what chakra he could through his body. Even immobile as he was, this he could do. He wasn't going to die there. Slowly, the sand grew to the size of a small ball, and from there the growth became exponential. Naruto could feel the tiredness settle on him as his chakra and abused body began to give away, but he couldn't stop. Not until he was free. Not until he was back with his teammates. Slowly, he brought the sand to pass beneath his body. Gaara had managed to make a floating platform seem so easy, but in truth, it wasn't. Naruto concentrated, his thoughts dedicated only to imagining a pair of floating hands that gently lifted him from below. He began to sweat as the hands lifted him from the ground and slowly, taking a deep calming breath, he opened his eyes and began to move forward. He began to ascend the rocky cliff, swaying to the right and the left as whenever his thoughts distracted him, the sand would crumble slightly. He gave a final mental push to the hands that were holding him, and the hands obeyed by launching him through the last meters towards the safety of the cliff's upper side. He landed on the rocky ground and hissed in pain as he rolled downwards, away from the edge. He could feel the saban still move inside of him. He gagged from the effort, the vomit in his mouth tasting coppery from the blood. He retched to the side of his convulsing body, and it was then that he gritted his teeth and used the sand to grind through his own skin, his flesh and muscles, to tear out the senbons. He did not scream as he finally could clench his fists, tense his body and wait for the pain to subside through racks of agony. He breathed slowly as his eyes settled on the dying sun. He quietly tried to stand, and the sand helped him up. He watched as the hands of sand he had created slowly started to form forearms, and then elbows. The hands assumed a human figure as he began to limp away from the scene. The more chakra he gave it, the more the figure became complete. By the time he was a few meters away, there was a woman instead of a pair of hands helping him walk. It wasn't someone he knew, and the look she gave him, it was sad. She was grieving, wasn't she? Why, Gaara, he tensed. He closed his eyes. This was Gaara's mother, wasn't it? The sand that protected the boy had been of his mother. And he had stolen it from him when he had killed the boy. He was using a power that didn't belong to him, something that had been gifted by a mother to her son, out of love. Had the boy known? He didn't want to linger on thoughts, not until he was out of danger and safely away from there. It was just as he stepped down from the narrow path to the cliff and towards the more plain-like ground that he heard a loud rumbling far away. He went down limp on the ground, using the sand to move the ground atop him as a cover to hide. The rumbling continued, growing stronger. In the end, Naruto closed his eyes and hoped for it to move away from him. He had done enough for the day. He just wanted to rest. Was it that difficult to understand? Jiraiya's eyes moved around the makeshift camp as he stood in sage mode, his senses increasing with Shima and Fukasaku's own. The two toads stood silent, their own bodies merged with his and tense in concentration. He felt a slight surge of chakra to the west of their position, which then later subsided. It could be Naruto, but it wasn't his chakra, not completely. He ground his teeth as he nodded to himself. They'd investigate there. He bit down on his thumb and slammed his hand down on the ground, letting the set of circular ink symbols come forth as he summoned a giant toad. Let's go! I felt something, he yelled to the team under his command. Yugao was busy holding Sakura's still limp form between her arms, but Sai's face was stern as he flickered right next to him, steadying himself on the toad's back. Jiraiya-sama, Yugao murmured. Is it safe? Sakura needs a hospital. There's nothing they can do about it now, Jiraiya replied firmly. That's more of a sealing matter, and I'm the seal expert. Just keep her warm and hope she wakes up and doesn't go berserk. He then gave a small nudge to the toad, who croaked once before suddenly jumping high above the clouds and forward. Renouncing the need to be subtle, the toad landed crashing against the ground repeatedly as it moved closer to where he had last sensed a surge of chakra. Jiraiya grimaced as he felt a multitude of corrupted senjutsu chakra signatures belonging to Orochimaru's lab experiments. The grimace became a frown when the toad landed once more and croaked. Jiraiya jumped down fast, moving quickly towards a mound of dirt and sand that stood out like a sore thumb through the plains. The moment he kicked it away, he saw Naruto's body covered in a light sheen of sand. Brat! Jiraiya's exclamation came just as the Sannin exhaled in relief. The kid was alive, if wounded. Only with you, he shook his head as he grabbed the boy and lifted him up with his arms. Only with you. Jiraiya-sama? Naruto croaked out, coughing sand and dirt mixed with blood as he cracked an eye encrusted with small crystals up. Are you, am I? Hush! He shushed him. Just sleep, you're safe now. The BA. Doesn't matter, Jiraiya grimaced. A puff of smoke later revealed a Kage Bunshin who nodded and headed towards the base. I'll send a Kage Bunshin. You just hang tight while we get you out of here. You have frogs on your shoulders. Heh, Naruto made a single chuckle before closing his eyes. The toad sage sighed. The moment he dropped gently Naruto on the back of the toad, Sai quickly moved to hold Sakura from falling as Yugao took care of the first aid. Yugao bit her lips. He's not that wounded, but he'll have a chat with Inoichi, Jiraiya nodded grimly. All POW do. How should we proceed now, Jiraiya-sama? We go back to Konoha, the toad sage declared. My Kage Bunshin will do the job and summon a frog to carry over anything important. Hanzaki's information will be put to good use and hopefully, here the Sannin grimaced. Hopefully this will be the last occasion where I have to see Minato's son wounded like this. Understood, Jiraiya-sama, Yugao nodded firmly. She stilled for a second then. Minato, Namikaze? Jiraiya nodded without giving it much of a thought, as he patted the toad to start jumping once more, ignoring all subtleties. The Yondaime? The toad continued to travel as Jiraiya nodded again without thinking, his mind occupied with thoughts on sealing and whatnot. Naruto is the son of the Yondaime? He nodded yet again. And the Sandaime said nothing? Another nod. It was then that Jiraiya blinked and turned to raise an eyebrow at Yugao. The brat didn't tell you. He told no one. Sai murmured then, blinking once as he held on to Sakura's prone form. Jiraiya sighed and looked to the sky. Me and my big mouth. And then he exhaled and chuckled to himself. Well, they were already in deep shit, and the boy needed some breather from the people of the village. That old geezer would probably not wring his guts for having gone against an S-rank secret, and if the rumors spread then maybe, just maybe, the boy would have a better life in Konoha. He gave a quick glance over to Sai, who was holding Sakura and looking at her seal. He was pervert, wasn't he? Hi, your name is Sai, right? The pale-skinned boy looked at him and nodded. Yes, Jiraiya-sama, would you like it? Jiraiya smiled. To become my apprentice? In Konoha, around the same time, Tsunade Senju looked in disbelief at the counselors. No, she shook her head. I'm not. Hiruzen's will was firm on this, Koharu remarked. He asked for Orochimaru as Hokage. Do you hate Konoha that much, Tsunade? The old woman remarked. With a traitor as Hokage, there would be revolts, and he wouldn't need more than a few days to simply overrun the village with his army and kill everyone who opposes him. Tsunade, Hamiara continued. You have selfishly lived for yourself, using the wealth of the Senju clan to perpetrate a life of self-destruction that, had you been my student, I would have dissuaded you from. Hiruzen was too kind to do that, and he let you grieve. You have grieved enough. The old man slammed his fist on the table. You will assume your role in Konoha as Hokage, and you will do so immediately. Do you not care for the many lives that will be lost? Do you not care for the children who will see their parents die fighting for their village? Do you truly not care for the civilians, for the innocents? Koharu sneered at Tsunade. What do you think Orochimaru will do when he gains control of the hospital? Do you think he will not try and experiment on newborns, like he did to recreate the cells of the first Hokage? Tsunade clenched her fists. Why couldn't they understand? Everything in Konoha reminded her of Dan, of Nawaki, and Orochimaru's words. There is darkness in Konoha, one so deeply rooted that only the Hokage may see it. The will of fire is but a shroud, Tsunade. A fool's mirror, because it hides behind it the corpses of the victims. She exhaled. She didn't want to do this. She really didn't want to. I understand, she murmured. Good. You start tomorrow. We will have the Senju compound brought back to its former splendor. Hamiara nodded. And Tsunade? I am glad you saw reason, Tsunade snorted as she left. Didn't they know? Orochimaru had told her they would choose her as next Hokage. By accepting, she was playing Orochimaru's hands. Then again, knowing her luck with playing, if she followed Orochimaru she was prone to making him fail whatever it was that the man had planned, and if she didn't, then she'd just meet Dan and Nawaki earlier. Chapter 40. The dawn ends. The soft, rhythmic sound of a heart monitor gently drifted Naruto out of his sleep. He breathed in a slow gust of air, before exhaling and feeling the pain his entire body suffered from. He had never felt such a sharp agony before. Every single fiber of his muscles ached and screamed in utter ache, as if someone had taken care of making him suffer. He could see an IV drip attached to his arm, dripping slowly a crystal and liquid substance. His eyes focused on his surroundings then. The fabric of the bed sheet was mildly uncomfortable, and the smell of antiseptic could only belong to a hospital. With a defeated groan, he tried to twitch his right hand. Carefully, as to not abuse his muscles or feel more pain, he moved the hand towards the metal rail that prevented him from falling. It was then that he saw the straps tying him down to the bed. His eyes moved past them, to the bed nearby. His gaze landed on soft pink curls, and that was enough to make his heart at ease. He moved to the other side, but found the bed empty. Sai wasn't wounded then, that was good. He closed his eyes again in defeat. He was too weak to move, and frankly, he was in a hospital and his teammate was right there next to him. There was nothing but sleeping and healing in such a place. Slowly, he fell back in the realm of the sleeping. A soft noise of steps woke him up again. This time his thoughts were slightly less fuzzy than before. He saw a dark-haired kunoichi with a long-sleeved jacket walk in, holding on to a medical chart and humming a little tune. She was wearing the Konoha forehead protector. Therefore, he was back in the village, and when the little piglet went to the market, she stopped humming all of a sudden, her eyes moving quickly over to the monitors to his side and then to his half-opened eyes. Oh! You're awake! That's good, Naruto exhaled slowly. Team, tea? She blinked back. I'm sorry, but you can't have liquids in you yet. Tsunade-sama has been pretty clear about that. Team, he croaked out in pain. My team, they are fine, Uzumaki-san, the woman replied. Haruno-san is still asleep near you. She woke up earlier but went back to sleep soon. Sato-san will probably come by during the normal visiting hours and beyond. She lowered her face near him to whisper with a light giggle. He thinks we can't see him stay way past the time of visits in the room. She winked at him before standing back up straight. How long? The kunoichi nodded, before looking at the medical chart once more. You've been out of it for about a week. Now you should just rest, alright? Naruto groaned and subtly nodded. What's the damage? A bit of everything, the kunoichi replied calmly. Mostly, it was the chakra exhaustion and the wounds you had on your body. They'll scar on your back, but, her voice trailed off, it's going to be alright. Sakura? The woman kept a smile on her face. She's fine. Jiraiya-sama took care of her. I cannot say more, but she is going to be well soon enough. There was the hint of a smile on the woman's face. Between you and me, she said then teasingly. She all but demanded to be moved here. We had to comply when we found out she refused to cooperate with us otherwise. The beeping of the monitor kept on going slowly, before Naruto's silence became heavy. The kunoichi seemed to fidget for a moment, as he stared at her deeply lost in thought. Everything he had done, everything he had suffered, it was coming to him now, painfully. Thank you, he finally whispered. Can you undo the straps now? The medic kunoichi nodded and deftly unbounded him, before turning and leaving, closing the door behind her. Naruto sighed and slowly stood up to sit at the edge of the bed, letting the metal guard rails fall down to the sides. He hissed in pain as he felt his muscle tense when he touched the cold hospital floor. He didn't have slippers, and the hospital floor apparently loved reminding him of that with its freezing temperature. He carefully slipped into the bathroom, his eyes locking with his reflection in the mirror. His cerulean eyes were a bit of a shade darker, as his entire appearance just screamed rugged and scraggly. His hair had grown back blonde. 2 weeks without dyeing it were apparently more than enough, and now stood to his shoulders, with half of it black. He looked like a bumblebee. The hospital soap smelled of disinfectant and nothing more, and as he opened the plastic foil, he swore he could smell Sai's own scent on it. Was the boy actually stealing his own soap from the hospital to begin with? He washed his hands, and then, calmly, he walked in the shower and washed himself. He removed the bandages. He tore the stitches out of his body. He gritted his teeth as the blood began to flow down the drain together with the dirt he had on him. It didn't matter if he looked clean, he knew he wasn't. He began to scrub his hair, his skin, his flesh. He had to be clean. He couldn't stand those eyes. Why was the woman sad? He couldn't stand sad. No. He couldn't. He sat down in the corner of the shower, his head down, his arms clasped around his legs as pain from the open wounds, and the burning sensation of soap on his blood kept him awake. He was a murderer. He had killed Gaara to save his team, but Gaara had a mother who loved him so much that she protected him even beyond death. Whom did he have? Nothing but a sickening burden. And the woman protected him because she believed he was Gaara. He was stealing the love of a mother for himself. He was being selfish, egoist, and he couldn't help but cry with the water that dropped from the showerhead. What could he tell the woman? What could he say to make her less sad? I'm sorry I ate your son. I'm sorry I ripped you apart from him. I'm sorry I killed him brutally. I'm sorry never worked for him. Demons don't get to be sorry. Sakura woke up to the smell of soap and blood. She knew she was still in the hospital, since Sai had just graciously told her everything when she had woken up. She had insisted on recovering in the same room as Naruto after that, because she hoped to see with her eyes was Naruto awake and Sai exchanging perverted words with him. When she did let her eyelids move aside, to let her gaze wander the room, she heard the sound of the shower going and the lack of Naruto in the room. She sighed in relief. When the sound of the water running went on for more than 5 minutes, relief left the place to nervousness. Shinobi did not enjoy wasting water. Sure, Konohagakure had to thank the Naidame Hokage for its nigh-perpetual water supplies, which coupled with the first Hokage's forest made it difficult to find and capable of surviving a long-term siege. A set of random thoughts popped up in Sakura's head then. The number of shinobi suicides post-mission increased tenfold in case the shinobi ended up as a POW before rescue, and the favorite place for suicidal shinobi was the bathroom. Sakura jumped out of the bed with a speed that her body refused to handle properly, sending her sprawling on the ground as her muscles locked down and refused to move. She gritted her teeth and snarled, before simply twisting her shoulders and pushing her palms against the cold floor. She exhaled as her entire body slammed against the door of the bathroom, opening it, as it hadn't been locked. She barely managed to stand that what she saw made her heart plummet to her stomach. There was blood everywhere in the shower, and Naruto's form was naked in a corner, cradling himself and bleeding from the open wounds. Naruto! She ended up running, or better yet falling, in the shower, her body colliding against his as her arms tightly encircled him. The water fell down her hair and her body, sticking the hospital gown to her form. She didn't care about that, a long way from when she could barely stand going somewhere without being proper, nor did she care it was a naked Naruto she was hugging, rather than a naked Sasuke. He wasn't even in her thoughts that much now. Sure, she whispered, letting her right hand behind his head, to gently cradle him along with her. Naruto had always been stronger than she had. He had always been the ace of the team. There was no doubting it, no going against it. He could survive nearly everywhere. He could fight and he could kill better than her or Sai, but seeing Naruto in such a state, it just broke her heart. What happened? She whispered, Want to talk about it. She moved her hand to stop the flow of water, letting the scathing liquid stop falling over her head. The vapors in the room were thick, but slowly dispersing, as she had left the door open. We should get dry, eh? She tried then. You're going to get sick, and so am I. She nudged him gently with her forehead, but nothing happened. Come on, Naruto. Her right eyebrow twitched. Come on. Slowly, he looked up from his entrenched position. His eyes were wide as saucers. As Sakura? What are you doing? It's not my fault you tried to drown yourself in the shower, she barked back at him angrily. What were you thinking, huh? No, I don't want to know, she suddenly said, bringing her right hand up to cusp his cheek. It's got to be something stupid anyway. Like how getting captured was your fault or something like that. She shook her head. I was knocked out far longer than you. Sai told me you jumped like an idiot to save us. She began to tremble. You're just a baka, aren't you, Sakura? He hesitated, especially when he saw tears starting to fall down his teammate's face, dribbling down her chin and then falling on the shower's ground. Why you don't get care about yourself, she continued. You stupid, dim-witted, sacrificial excuse of a shinobi. She didn't really mean those words, as her trembling and her tears simply kept on increasing with every word she said. Sai was so scared and I was furious when he told me, and she babbled, shaking her head. And I can't lose you too. She choked on her words after that, sobbing. Naruto's arms encircled Sakura's frame. This time it was his turn to console her apparently. Sakura, he croaked out, I'm not going anywhere, she sniffled. Jiraiya-sama wants you as an apprentice. I can't keep you here with that. I won't go. There will be missions to do, we can't always be together on those. Then I won't take them. Sakura exhaled slowly, a small smile now displayed on her lips. Baka. She pressed her forehead against his then. Naruto? You promise you'll never leave me? Naruto tightened his hold on her body, before whispering back. I promise. His lips were now inches away from her own, and I never go back on my promises. It's my Nindo. Her lips moved closer as she closed her eyes, the feeling of the wet fabric of the hospital gown forgotten as she just felt the need to kiss him. Then a voice interrupted them. Kinky. The simple smug tone belonged to none other than Sai, who was watching the scene and actually using a brush to paint it. Don't move. Harem Lord, stay still like that. I'll entitle this, he said with a calm and cool voice, the first love kiss of Kinky and Harem Lord. Naruto chuckled nervously, as Sakura huffed and looked back at Sai with a mild glare. Sai, Kinky, I can see your flatboard, Sai deadpan. It is a horror that I will never forget. Sakura suddenly turned crimson as she realized the wet fabric was sticking all over her body. And Harem Lord? Don't point your kunai at me. Kunai? Naruto's gaze widened, before he looked down to his kunai. He stuttered and fell on his back, before ending up with a yelp and covering it up. Pervert. Yes, Sai nodded. Well, he turned to leave the bathroom. At least we know you aren't dickless anymore, and with that he strolled out. Don't take long, then again, Harem Lord is probably going to be fast anyway. 5 seconds later, an steaming red Sakura left the bathroom, soon followed by a nervously chuckling Naruto who just kept on shaking his head while muttering pervert in a sort of condescending tone. The girl grabbed a change of hospital clothes from the drawer and returned into the bathroom to change, before stepping out dried and clean. So Sai, what's going on? Naruto asked, sitting back on the edge of his bed and letting his legs dangle from it. Sakura did the same on her own bed, and Sai grabbed the chair to sit in the middle between them. Super pervert took me on an apprenticeship, he said quietly. I will be following him on some long-term missions outside of Konoha soon. Sai, Sakura hesitated, her right hand up as if to touch Sai's face. The boy just looked at her with a small smile. It's all right, Kinky. I'm not leaving forever. Only for a few months at most at a time, and I have to train with him privately to learn his few ninjutsu skills. Still, Naruto made an awry face, followed by a grimace. We're supposed to be. We still are a team, Sai nodded. Even if you try to get my ass and Kinky tries to rape you daily, a nervous tick mark appeared on Sakura's face. We are a team, and you're my friends. That's why, I must do this. I have to become stronger. An uncomfortable silence descended in the room for a few more minutes, before Naruto broke it off with a knowing gaze. Hi, what if we ditch the hospital and go eat somewhere else? He smiled then, like at Hibi? Sakura's eyes widened. Naruto! You're going to open your wounds again, come on Sakura-chan! He whined back, for me? He fluttered his eyelids and grinned at the kunoichi, who stammered and looked back with a perplexed gaze at her teammate. Naruto, she softly whispered with a smile. You baka, and then she began to giggle. Naruto soon laughed next, and Sai, not understanding what the subtle meanings were going on around him, simply smiled. Niji Hyuga walked calmly out of the compound, his belongings on his back. He had a small apartment, and there was no need to remain in a place that held so many bitter memories for him. He walked and ignored the looks of surprise some of his fellow clansmen gave him, or the looks of perplexity coming from the random Konoha citizen. For the first time, a Hyuga had chosen the third option. The curse seal and the Byakugan, those defined a branch member. Always second, always unworthy of the main branch. Those who followed the shinobi path of the branch became Anbu. They fought in secret and they died with their names hidden. To be free of a cage, another had to come to life. If one was of the main branch, then leaving Konoha or its outskirts was unadvised. Enemy shinobi could steal the Byakugan after all, the Hyuga kidnapped and used to make more. But there was a third option. Without Byakugan, without that which defined a Hyuga as such, without the sight, the techniques, the knowledge of what being Hyuga was, one could open the cage by sacrificing his eyes and his beak, and Niji Hyuga, once prideful star of the branch family, had chosen so out of his own free will, for he was free. His eyes were mismatched. One was blue, and the other was green. The things he saw were no longer in details, as the eyes he had were normal, not the powerful, all-seeing Byakugan. It was as if a thin film of dirt had settled over the colors, the air, the persons, as if everything was more opaque, less shining, less defined and concrete. He would get used to this, however. His team disbanded. Lee had not woken up from the coma and Tenten was dead. His sensei had awkwardly shaken his head and declared he was unworthy of any fire of use until he repented for what had happened with Lee. Now, he was setting in and calmly placing his stuff in the drawer of his one-room apartment. He was no better than an orphan, one who was without a clan and had to survive on what the village sent him. Nevertheless, he would start working as an assistant to the medics in the hospital. He would learn from them. He would train himself in healing techniques, and he would become a medic nin. He would become just like the legendary Tsunade, because Tenten couldn't. Therefore, in her stead, he had shamelessly stolen her dream. But he was free, and he would use his freedom to help. He clenched his hands and then carefully opened the package his uncle had given him as he had left the compound. It was a simple scroll, something he could have gotten from the library of Konoha with no trouble whatsoever. Refined chakra techniques for beginners. He carefully caressed the back of the scroll, before slowly opening it. I am sorry, Niji, that it has come to this. He closed his eyes and breathed, before opening them again to the parchment in front of him. What was there, below his uncle's apology, was not a book on chakra techniques. It was the secret to the caged bird seal. It was the way to remove it. His uncle, he had given him the key to free the other caged birds. And Niji couldn't help but bitterly laugh as tears fell from the eyes that weren't his. Really? What a sick joke, he laughed. Really? He shook his head and then, firmly, he began to read. He would memorize it, and then he would burn it. There was no need for anyone else to find such a powerful tool in his room. His uncle had gone against the elders to give this to him. He had entrusted this to him, and, because of that, there really was nothing else that remained as proof that his uncle had sacrificed his father. His father had chosen to sacrifice himself for his brother. He had acted freely. He, Niji Hyuga, no, just Niji, he would do the same. For all of the clan, he would gladly sacrifice himself. Aburame Shino was calmly taking tea, when his sipping abruptly ended by the arrival of Hibachi, who huffed and sat down next to him. You know, I think they're plotting something against us. The Aburame raised an eyebrow behind his sunglasses at his teammate, but said nothing. They're giving us a replacement for Hinata. Shino said nothing. Hibachi huffed. It's that Inuzuka, he added. You know, the one with the dog. Shino nodded. And he's a boisterous idiot, always going around barking and whatnot. But I'll show him who the leader of this team is. Yes, I shall. Shino remained quiet. He really didn't want to have to tell the truth to Hibachi about who was the team leader in the team. After all, it was obvious and logical that only an Aburame could be the team leader. Shino said nothing of the sort also because Hibachi had a weak self-esteem. If he told the boy the truth, he would probably commit seppuku. Of course, Those were Shino's thoughts. Still better than getting Ami, the boy shuddered. I was glad she was dead for one, always yelling around. Shino remained quiet again. You know the good thing about you, Shino? You listen. It's a good trait for an underling. He refrained from having his Kakachu deliver flesh-eating variants to the boy's flesh. He would not go to jail for the murder of a fellow shinobi, no matter how alluring the prospect was. Although maybe you should ditch the bugs, Hibachi added. They don't give off the right vibe, you see? Hibachi-san, Shino said then, turning his piercing sunglasses stare at him. Silence. The fact his Kakachu rose as if he was a peacock to buzz behind his back just gave him more of a leeway in intimidation matters. Hibachi paled, then swallowed nervously, and finally nodded and looked away sulking. Creepy, Shino sighed. He really did need better friends. Shikamaru Nara was tired. He was always tired, but this particular day was the most tiresome of them all. It had started out great though. He had slept until midday and then had eaten without his mother glaring or nagging at him. Then, quite simply, everything had gone to hell when Asuma-sensei had decided that he could use with some individual extra training with his father. Now there he was, trying to stop Lee's shadows from falling down as he avoided shurikens that were actually made of real steel, and not the cheap dull iron imitation used to scare the genin that Jounin sometimes used. And he was already bleeding. His mother was going to kill his father when he got back home. There was no doubt about it, and yet Shikako soldiered on with trying his best to wound him. Shikamaru had never known his father for being fast, but then again, he knew very little about his father to begin with. That laid-back attitude is going to get you killed, Shikako said gruffly, his gaze fixed on him from whatever spot he had chosen to hide in. Fight like you mean it, it's too bothersome. Shikamaru exhaled. Come on, Dad, stop this, Mom's going to be mad. Shikamaru, his father's voice was stern now. Better to kill you myself than let an enemy do so out of Konoha. A kunai streaked down near his chin, leaving behind a gash not very different from the one his father himself had. Another soon followed, which Shikamaru barely dodged. That one aimed for his head. Pops? He was starting to get scared now. Listen, Shika. This is for your own good. Around him, the trees grew quiet and the animals silent. The world is not a happy place. What awaits you, what awaits your teammates? I cannot let you go out without that knowledge. Pops? Shikamaru was sweating. If I have to let you go out of Konoha without this important piece of information, then it is best I take your life now, rather than let someone else do it. What is it then? Shikamaru asked carefully. In that moment, Shikamaru saw a bare flicker of leaves, which a kunai then followed a mere inch away from his face. The Nara air paled as his father held the tip of the metal weapon close to his eye. You are not immortal, Shikamaru. You can die. The enemy can wound you. You can lose the life of a teammate, but you can also lose your own life in the process. You lost Ino. Do you wish to lose Chuji too? Shikamaru tensed and sweated for a moment, before shaking his head slowly as his father removed the kunai from his face. No. Then show me your spirit, Shikamaru. Show me you have what it takes to mold the world, and not to be molded by it. In a dark and damp structure, a few miles beneath the surface of the earth, Sasori of the Red Sand dispassionately watched as his puppets took care of the corpses of a few unlucky civilians who stumbled upon him. Of course, he could have easily hid his presence from them, but then again he did need a few more puppets to add to his collection, and they should have known better than to simply walk around without a shinobi escort. The discarded bodies lost their bones, their flesh and muscles divided neatly together with their nerves. What he could not use, he burned and destroyed with a puppet spewing fire. His dead eyes noticed the shadows lurking in the back and he ignored them. The shadows slowly took on form, and he still ignored them. Is everything proceeding well? Zetsu asked him. Yes, Sasori drawled out. Everything is on schedule. Very well, Zetsu nodded. At least someone respects the schedule. I am a puppeteer, he answered back to the disappearing plant. I work like clockwork. He twitched a chakra string, slowly letting it send microscopically precise pulses to the arms and legs of an 8-legged arachnid puppet with 8 arms. The puppet resembled a sort of spider, with a humanoid body. Its jaws clacked together as it began to expel a thin strand of chakra turned to web. The 8 arms quickly grabbed a humanoid puppet already completed and enclosed it into a cocoon, doing the work nimbly and efficiently. The spider then moved to a nearby door, which it opened with its rear legs to enter. The cocoon dropped into a well-lit room, where torches crackled and the air was warm. The spider closed the door behind him as he returned to his duties, leaving the cocoon together with the others. The many others that filled out the natural cave beneath an oasis of the land of wind. Thousands of cocoons stood there, hanging from chakra webbings as if a spider had been birthing them, but there was no flesh inside. No, there was but wood and chakra, poison and metal, but the living beings, the humans that belonged to the caravans kidnapped, they were alive as the webbing ripped their souls out from their bodies, to plunge them into those of uncaring puppets. An army that feared no enemy, that had no desire for water or food, and would not betray the orders of its masters. An army of perfect puppets, that needed no puppeteer. And the tools to do so, the fuinjutsu, the technique, the skills, to do everything like that, Orochimaru had procured, Pain had brought, and he would be the artificer of a new era. In the floating land of the sky, hovering above the clouds far up, Orochimaru watched with a dispassionate and bored look the few victims the Zero Tails needed to feed and sustain everything. Even without tales of power, even without any type of secret skill or power it could bestow on a Jinchuriki, it devoured the Jinchuriki, to say the least of the last experiment he had tried with it. The beast's natural utility was endless. It didn't sense evil, no, it sensed pain. It understood it, it absorbed it, it made it more. The beast locked its mask-like face with 5 long strands of red hair towards him, and inclined its head to the side. Not today, Orochimaru replied, shaking his head. Soon, but not today. The beast slowly nodded, and returned to devour the pain of a scared Sounin that had valiantly sacrificed himself for the greater cause. Orochimaru snorted. Idealists were stupid. To work in the shinobi world, the heart has to die. To live in the shinobi world, the soul has to die. To prosper in the shinobi world, whom you are, what you do, what you feel, everything that makes you someone, it has to die and remain deeply buried into a remote corner of your mind, never to see the light again. The time draws near, the beast whispered, looking for a crack in his armor. There are none. Stop prodding, Orochimaru hissed. Your duty calls, Rabi. The Zero Tails nodded then, before extending its frame and releasing hands of pure white that struck around the walls of its prison. Deftly those hands pulled at secret panels that lit up, and soon the tower began to move and work better. Ruins were repaired, buildings began to work again. What a war had damaged the Rabi brought back within mere minutes. Then, of course, it stopped. Bring more. Fine, Orochimaru curtly nodded as he left. Outside the hallway, he gestured to Hebe to follow him. The girl had her hair dyed purple, with streaks of dark Prussian blue. Her eyes had a light hazel color, benefit of dyed lenses. Now, as I was saying, my little Hebe, the snake spoke calmly, you must understand the key concepts of pain, endurance, and mind-shattering. Hebe just nodded numbly, as she followed her sensei. Pain can be physical, Orochimaru remarked casually, or it can be mental, or, even better, it can be spiritual. Let me tell you that losing a piece of your soul is not something anyone should aspire to feel on their body. Yes, Orochimaru-sama, Hebe droned out. Good, he nodded. Now, have you any questions, Anko? No, Orochimaru-sama. Very well, Orochimaru nodded. You learn quickly enough. A shinobi must always be able to differentiate between various personas. There is a time where acting like a lunatic can earn you more than acting like an intelligent shinobi, and times where humor can work better in distracting your foes than cunningness. To do the unexpected is to win. The snake Sannin stopped and grabbed Hebe's throat too fast for the girl to see or block. Action and reaction dictate the ways the world goes. He slammed her against a metallic wall nearby. To kill a seedling you need but a little amount of frost. To kill a tree you need a hurricane. To remove the rot and the filth that is deeply rooted into this world, one needs more than just a light breeze. Hebe's legs began to kick spasmodically, as her breathing grew ragged and coarse. Orochimaru's long tongue slowly began to trickle saliva on the girl's face. The snake Sannin's face morphed into one of sadistic pleasure. To keep your calm, he spat out after his tongue returned in his mouth. Even in front of the unexpected, he slammed the girl on the ground and proceeded to walk again, is what makes a true shinobi skilled and strong enough to survive. Why yes, Orochimaru-sama, she shuddered as she stood, shaking slightly from the pain in her body, but mostly because of the fright from having the sage lick her. Was he going to eat her? Or what if he wanted something worse? What is your name, Hebe? Orochimaru asked, then gently putting up that face she feared more than the others he usually had. Because if answered wrongly, then there would be pain to answer to with that face on. I'm Amaterasu Anko? A slap landed on her cheek with strength, sending her to fly in midair before she landed with a sickening crunch against the wall nearby. Her right arm was twisted and broken. The impact was not supposed to do that. I weakened your bone structure when I grabbed your neck, Orochimaru smiled. Your arms, your legs, they will shatter easily for a few precious minutes. Now, answer me, girl. What? Your name, Hebe, a sickening crack, her voice racked in pain as she screamed. Name, I don't know. Another limb, another broken bone. Why was he torturing her like that? She had done everything he had wanted her to. She had been the perfect student. He had said so the day before. He had done it. He had hit the targets with her kunai all the times. I don't know, she sobbed. Whatever you wish for me to be, Orochimaru-sama, please, don't hurt me anymore, please. And then she felt woozy as her surroundings shifted and she found herself still following behind Orochimaru. That was not difficult, Orochimaru nodded to her. See? You can do it if you apply yourself. Hebe coughed, tears streaking down her chins. You are not Hebe or Mitarashi, Anko, Orochimaru said calmly. You are what I decide for you to be. If tomorrow I will call you a whore, you will become one. If the next day I'll be in need of a kunoichi, you'll become one. You are nothing and no one. You hold no name of your own, he snarled as he slowly moved closer, his right hand holding her cheek. Understood, Anko-chan? And Hebe nodded numbly as Orochimaru just smiled gently. Very well, the snake sage said, for today, you can be my apprentice. Let us go then, Anko-chan. Hi-sensei, she croaked out. She could do this. She just had to remain sane. Yes, she could do this. She was the number one kunoichi Anko Mitarashi after all. Nothing was impossible for her. The real Anko Mitarashi looked with a bored look at the council. They went on ranting about how she had to be a proper example of guidance and be under the personal instruction of Kakashi and Umbu. Joy, they trusted her now with Umbu work. Her loyalty never sent her further than interrogations, and even then, she never went further than doing them with someone else. There always had to be someone watching her. The Sandaime had made it clear, and it had stuck. She could not teach genin teams. Why, she would never understand. Her apprentice for a month had defeated the top favorite, and she had earned quite a win with the betting pool that day. Of course, nobody could bet on the Jinchuriki, but she did bet on whom the boy would kill and she won quite a bit. It was only a pity that the Rock Lee guy survived, but she couldn't expect Cammy to provide her with too much luck. She was already too sexy to be legal to begin with. She was so sexy the reason people averted their eyes when she walked on the streets was because the women were jealous and the boys embarrassed. She was so sexy people tried to catch her attention in every way possible, from trying to assassinate her to drunkenly trying to slap her ass in bars and pubs. She smiled brightly at the council asses, watching them leave her alone with the one-eyed pervert who was always late and the new Hokage with humongous breasts. So, Mitarashi Anko, Tsunade began slowly. You trained under my old teammate Orochimaru, that son of a bitch in heat? Anko smiled widely as she said that. She was always so happy when they spoke of her ex-sensei, of the man she had trusted so much that she had even been willing to betray Konoha for him. And he had told her no. He had called her weak. He had left her behind. She had pleaded and asked why, and he had just answered that she was too weak for him. She hadn't returned to Konoha because she was loyal to the village. She had returned because no one else wanted her in the world. Yes, I suppose that is a title for him, Tsunade nodded calmly. I would like to know, however, do you truly wish to be saddled with the Sharingan? Anko just scoffed, and then smiled. Of course. Loss of vision means nothing when I can be a sexy and undefeatable kunoichi. Yes, about that. Tsunade shook her head. You will be going to the following psychological visits with Inoichi, and you are obliged to dress properly when in his office. He does not want a repeat of last time. You mean the time his wife found me naked taking off his pants? Anko smiled sweetly. I didn't know that, but the answer still remains, no improper clothing. But that's a crime against my breasts. Anko whined, grabbing both of her milk jugs and pressing them firmly. They aren't even sagging. Look at their firmness. I mean, you can't tell me to hide my babies. Kakashi was slowly losing blood from his nose, as he closed the book he was reading. Ika milkshake pandemonium. I can and I will, Tsunade replied. Since I am the Godame Hokage, this is something I can do, only if Kakashi stops reading porn. Anko said, pointing her finger towards the silver-haired jounin. Tsunade scoffed. Deal, she turned to Kakashi. While Anko Mitarashi is having her psychic evaluations, you are not to read porn. The hours? Kakashi replied. 1 hour a day for a few weeks. Tsunade replied, completely ignoring Anko's frantically waving of hands and screams of it's unfair. I'll use that as my nap hour then. The silver-haired jounin shrugged and went to look out of the window. His only eye turned into an eye smile. I'll be going then, unless you still need me, Tsunade-sama? Tsunade shook her head. You may go, both of you. And as the two flickers of leaves left her in an empty office, she slowly let her hand creep to where the secret sake reserve was. She needed a drink. It was going to be a long and hard journey ahead of her, but to see Dan and Iwaki once more, she would travel to hell itself and back, while making deals with the devil himself. Because she was tired of living a life alone, devoid of the people she loved, except Jiraiya. But he didn't count because he was not only a pervert, but also because, well, she had been responsible for the death of his wife after all. To that day, she would never forget the look of hurt he had given her. That was the day the Jiraiya she knew of died, and because of that, she would never dare to try to love him. He didn't deserve a wreck like her. He never did.